Greetings, everyone. And welcome to oh my God, it's midnight. When is the movie gonna start? Edition of Monster Party.
Monster Party.
Monster Party. Monster Party.
Yes.
It's so late. It's late.
This is so familiar.
Late night.
When is this going to start?
It's starting now.
That's
It's,
right.
that's what we're doing. We're doing our show. And that was a little bit of a hint, kind of a funny madcap hint to what we're talking about. But before we get into that, let me introduce myself. I am Matt Weinhold.
I am SHAWN SHERIDAN.
I am Larry STROTHE.
And I'm James GONIS.
And for this episode, we're going back. We're going back to some familiar territory
Yes.
and a beloved guest.
Yes.
Thank you.
But first, before we get to that, let's talk about the topic, because we, in the past, did a couple episodes around the topic of cult films.
That's right.
And, Sean, what were the titles of our past two?
Yes. Our first one was Attack of the Killer Cult Films.
Great title.
Our second one was Revenge of the Killer Cult Films.
I think even better.
That's right. Because we
And,
love cult films, genre
love
cult
films.
films. That's right.
And so what we're going to do now is another edition revolving around cult films entitled The Killer Cult Films Strike Back.
Killer Cult Films Strike Back.
They're back.
Oh, they're back.
Back. Okay, but look. The $24,000 question here is what is a cult film? How do you define a cult film?
I don't know. I have no idea. So I guess that's our show.
No, but I'll tell you, we need an expert in cult films to help guide us through this.
To remind us what cult films are, so we can do an episode.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I'm just,
indeed.
I'm pleased as punch that our resident cult film expert has returned. And James, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about this lovely man?
Yes, indeed. Our guest has been writing about movies and the media since the late 80s. Some of the publications he's edited or contributed to include the Motion Picture Guide, Movies on TV, TV Guide, Films in Review, Psychotronic Video, Groovy Movies, Videoscope,
Dear Lord.
and Time.com.
Time.com.
For two decades, he's consistently produced his own weekly late night show on Manhattan Cable Access called Media Funhouse, celebrating everything from high art to low trash and back again.
That's right.
So good.
Some of his devoted fans have included Jim Jarmusch, Art Spiegelman, and critic Richard Corliss, who gave him a glowing review in Time magazine. Guys, we're thrilled to welcome back our friend Ed Grant.
Ed Grant!
All right, Ed.
Thank God you're here.
The only thing that's changed about that is we're now September 30th of this year that we're doing this in 2023. It's 30 years. It actually has been on since 1993. Yeah, we're in the fourth year. Yeah, that's when we did it. Jim did the camera work on the first solo episode. I had a partner who was out of it within 2 months.
That's
and the topic that time was the cult movie Double Agent 73. And that aired in the New York area when they gave me a makeup date because they screwed up the first airing near Seinfeld. You could watch Seinfeld on Channel 4, an NBC affiliate in New York. And then I think it was the next half an hour on local public access. You could see Double Agent 73.
That's the Doris Wishman one?
Yes,
right?
yes. Where she's not only, she has a camera planted in her breast and kills everyone, but takes their picture before she kills them.
Kind of like Peeping Tom.
Yes. That's what
Yeah, inspired by that. Yeah.
Three decades.
Three decades. It's terrifying. Getting older and older. Yes.
And you've interviewed so many filmmakers and actors and celebrities and auteurs from all over the world. You got on press junkets. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me how diligent you are and how persistent you've been at this.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been sort of, I kind of have gotten people when they're on the way up and then say, and I'm not saying this in any derogatory sense, but when they're on the way down, when they're doing the convention circuit or they're sort of,
right.
And those people have the most time. Obviously, the people who are celebrities at the moment have no time for any of this, but if they're on the way up and they're on the way down, they have time for you. So I've always been very lucky to benefit from that. So.
Well,
thank you much. I'm flattered to be here again.
And,
Yes,
and,
we can.
and we're honored to have you. And so,
Thank
you know, we were talking before your intro about what a cult film is. And what do you think a cult film is?
We were talking about it before the mics went on, actually. And I would say what I said back then was any film that develops a following. Now, that would not be like Larry had introduced Star Wars. Star Wars has a massive following. I don't know if Star Wars quite fits, but a film that would have a niche following, a film that people re-see again and again and again. I mean, yeah, there are people who see The Godfather again and again and again, and The Godfather might be shoehorned. We mentioned the Danny Peary books before we went on. There were 3 of them, and he put The Wizard of Oz in there, and that's a real challenge to the cult movie theory, so to speak, because Wizard of Oz has devoted followings of music fans, gay fans, you know, Judy Garland fans, fantasy fans, and they love that movie. But it was one of the most popular movies of 1939 and has remained an evergreen. So it could be something as evergreen as Wizard of Oz, but it could also be some straight to video or shot on video horror movie, micro budgeted, you know, melodrama. It basically is what you want it to be. It's sort of like the old definition of pornography. I'll know it when I see it. Basically, it's sort of, I know that's a cult movie. Sometimes even Robert Altman would say when he put out his films, I think this is going to do well on video. And that meant he thought it had a second life, that it wasn't going to succeed in theaters, but it had a second life on video and on cable. And that's what's happened with a lot of movies.
I think too, also sometimes it can apply to movies that kind of maybe weren't recognized or it did well at the time, and then are kind of rediscovered and reappraised and become better known from a different perspective or from a different time, but and of course
sometimes within a short time too. Their initial release.
And of course with us, you know, genre stuff, especially horror, sci-fi, and fantasy films and thrillers or whatever, a lot of times you get really interesting titles in the cult realm from that.
Exploitation, for example.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
Sure.
Right. Yep.
All right. Well, what do you say we get started with this?
Totally.
Yeah.
Ed, you always have such interesting entries. So why don't you
start out with a bang. The things I picked tonight, depending on how many we do, the only link between these films, because they're very disparate cult movies, is that they all deal with location. They all were shot in a certain place, and they all have this feeling of the place that they were shot in. So I hope to put that into all of the films that we talk about tonight that I pick.
Oh, cool.
The first one I wanted to talk about, I interviewed this director on the show, and I think I'm the only American journalist who ever talked to this guy with a camera in the room. I might be the only American interviewer of him at all. An Italian director who died 20 years ago, named Marco Ferreri, who was a contemporary of Fellini. He knew Fellini and Rossellini, and he worked as an actor for Godard and Pasolini. He was in the mix of the 60s and 70s. What he made was a series of bizarre allegory films. The most famous one is called Le Grand Bouffe. It is 4 haute bourgeoisie guys. It's the most elegant French and Italian actors, Michel Piccoli, Philippe Noiret, Ugo Tognazzi, and Marcello Mastroianni, and they're bored with life. Life sucks. And this was his thing, not to do a film about hippies in the 70s. It was to make one about the haute bourgeoisie deciding to do a Roman orgy to die. They want to eat themselves to death, and they want to have hookers, bring hookers in.
I know how I'm going out.
But see, this is the thing. Ferreri realized that if you really do that, and this is what the film becomes, it becomes a bad taste comedy. In fact, John Waters is a big fan. It basically becomes them farting. They didn't realize that if you eat that much food, you'll become impotent. You can't have sex with the hookers. So a lot of Ferreri's allegories are about people who become obsessed with a given. One of his weirder ones in the 60s was Marcello Mastroianni, obsessed with how much air can fill a balloon. There's one from the late 70s with Christoph. Yeah, it's called Blow Up. I thought it's called Blow Out because of Blow Up. It had another name. The later one that's like that is Christopher Lambert, under the name Christophe Lambert, because it was shot in French or Italian. It's called I Love You. And he falls in love with a little watch fob that's a woman's face that says I love you. And he whistles and it'll say I love you. And he jerks off to it. And it becomes his girlfriend, his partner, this little. And then he gets in a motorcycle crash and his teeth are broken and he can no longer whistle. He is impotent. This was this weird, the fixations of Ferreri involved all of these.
Ed, and stop making up movies and start making about real movies. Because I cannot believe I've never
these
heard
are
of
really
these.
weird. Yeah, they all came out on one box, which I have here, which I would bring down. And if I don't bring down, it'll drop too many things. Koch Lorber. My interview was on the box called Marco Ferreri Collection, 8 DVDs. It includes a film that has young Roberto Benigni. The thing was, he always got A-list stars to embarrass the hell out of themselves. Wow. He has a film film called Liza with Marcello and Deneuve, who had a lifelong affair. She was at his bedside when Marcello died, not his wife that he was still married to. But they're on an island, and she kills his dog by mistake, and he makes Catherine Deneuve his dog. So she's literally fetching sticks. That's one movie. He literally had a series of these obsessive things. He made one with Depardieu, where Depardieu is seen jerking off, and I believe he is jerking off. And it's about the new woman and feminism and the old, male chauvinist pig dinosaur. And it has an end. I won't give away the end, but the end just makes men howl. Men don't like seeing the end, and you can almost guess where it's going because he has finished as a man. Okay. So he did one also called Please No, Don't Touch the White Woman, which was a sequel to Le Grand Bouffe. He got even more famous actors to do a Western comedy in which they're making fun of Nixonian America, and he's Custer, Marcello Mastroianni. It's literally a crazy, goofy comedy with this incredible cast of sophisticated French and Italian actors. Wow. The film I want to address, though, and this is the one that introduced me to him, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Bye Bye Monkey from 1978 is a film that is, to him, and this is very weird, we'll talk about this later with another film if I get into it, where the filmmaker has a different perception of the film than the film I saw, because he saw it as a sci-fi film. The film is about Gerard Depardieu has a girlfriend, Mimsy Farmer, in a acting troupe. They're feminists. She doesn't really want to have a baby. He's debating, should he have a baby? He wants to be a pregnant man. One day he just walks by the area downtown near where Battery Park is in New York City. It was shot in New York City in English. So basically he sees what used to be sand there. It used to be a beach before they had completely renovated the Battery Park area. So he sees a dead monkey. Now, this was supplied by his friend Dino De Laurentiis. It's one of the giant monkeys used in the 1976 Jeff Bridges version. So he has a dead monkey, but it yields... King Kong. Yeah, I should have said the name of the film. Yes, King Kong. He got a King Kong giant monkey. They laid it on that beach area leading to the water, and it has a little baby. It's a mother. It's like Gorgo or something. It's a mommy, and the baby becomes his baby for the rest of the movie. It's a chimp thing. You can actually find on YouTube. He was on the Stanley Siegel show. Depardieu, Marcello Mastroianni saluting this movie because they must have made a deal that they'll appear on Stanley Siegel and promote the monkey. The monkey is actually, so it's this but it's not a comedy in any way like a funny animal comedy. It's an allegory about birth, he felt it was New York City at its death. And this is interesting because it's the time of Taxi Driver. It's the dangerous New York. Right. So he has these crews roaming around New York cleaning things that look like they're in space age costumes. So when I interviewed him, I said, you've got this amazing record of New York in the 70s. It's the most realistic film I've seen about New York in the 70s, directed by a foreign director. And his answer was, it's not, what are you saying? It's a documentary, you're saying? And I said, no, it's fictional. But he said, no, it's a sci-fi film. It's about a city constructing and deconstructing itself. It had to be translated, what he was saying, and he had all these ideas. What it is, he calls, by the way, the baby monkey is named Cornelius. They decided to call it Cornelius for obvious reasons. And the cast is this international cast. So you've got Mastroianni, who's in it as an old man, and he hangs himself at one point. I think that was because he said, I got to get out of this movie. I gave you 2 weeks, I'm gone. He suddenly hangs himself as a character. You're like, why did he hang himself? Depardieu is the star with Mimsy Farmer. Geraldine Fitzgerald runs a little troupe of like these kind of wastrel people who hang around with the monkey. James Coco runs an Imperial Rome wax museum downtown.
Oh my God.
And the thing that's weirdest about this is a futuristic thing, and this is my final point about it that freaks people out, because I put up the scene on YouTube when I had it on the show. Basically, there's a scene where Geraldine Fitzgerald sings a nursery rhyme to the little baby monkey. And she sings, when the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, down will come baby. And he does a long shot, and you see the nascent World Trade Center, which is just open because it's 1978. Down will come baby, cradle and all. And it's just like a creepy scene.
Wow.
Post 9/11. It meant nothing then. It's almost like Chris Marker, one of my all-time heroes, who I talked about La Jetée a few episodes ago. He said, you never know what you might be filming. He said, you film stuff, and then 20 years later, you know what the hell you filmed sometimes. Right. And in this case, Marco Ferreri also gave me an autographed picture, which I should present, but I have it hung up in the other room. And it was him yelling, showing Depardieu how to act like a monkey, like he's supposed to be taking over the parentage of a monkey. And he's doing this, and he's in front of the World Trade Center. And he wrote on it for me, Il posto non esiste, which translates as this place is no longer here, which is weird because he wrote it for me in 1996.
Wow.
So because there's no beach there. to me, because I live in New York City and I was a kid. I was 14, whatever. I know I say my age quietly. And I remember the city looking like that. And he's like, no, it's a sci-fi film. And I'm like, it's a sci-fi film. How the hell? To him, because of the themes he was involved with and the fact that he had all these people dress up in sort of stormtrooper helmets or whatever as the people, the police and the people taking the garbage away. So it's a very strange film. It was on DVD. It was part of that set from Koch Lorber. The way you can find it these days, it might even be on, and the secret weapon here, if I'm allowed to mention sites, there is YouTube, there is Dailymotion, there is Vimeo. There is a Russian YouTube called OK.ru. They have everything. They have an amazing amount of foreign films with English subtitles. It's an amazing trove of stuff, and it now has Funhouse episodes because because of the nature of what I do on Access, I couldn't put my episodes on YouTube. YouTube blocks my episodes because I use footage from too many films, and it's not fair use. So OK.ru doesn't have that rule, and they might even have this. I'm not sure if they have this exact one, but this has been on DVD. It's just currently out of distribution, I think, for the moment. The only criterion by him is another concept movie, Dillinger is Dead, in which it's nothing about Dillinger. It's Michel Piccoli comes home and kills his wife. He wants to run away with the maid or something, and he kills. You go through a whole experience for an hour and a half of a man who's disillusioned and he hates his job. And then at the end, he takes out a psychedelic gun and shoots his wife, and that's the end of it. That one's on Criterion. So that's so Marco Ferri's movies are a series of and the first question I asked was, your movies are about obsessive men, and he goes, no, they aren't. And I was just like, and if you just recite the plots, they're all about obsessive men who have one. Oh, the big American one too, but it was shot in Italy. Tales of Ordinary Madness. Ben Gazzara playing Bukowski.
Okay, that I've heard of. Yeah,
that's Marco Ferri.
What's the monkey one again?
Oh, Bye Monkey. Is it in English?
It's called Bye Monkey.
Bye Monkey. Bye Monkey. Could you imagine if that thing was added to the Go Ape Planet of the Apes marathon?
They do mention Cornelius for obvious reasons. They mention the baby, and they go, "What should we call him? Call him Cornelius." And it's like a little joke for people to laugh at.
This is the date is 78.
78, yeah, 78. I mean, they might have shot it like 77. You know what would be the best barometer of when it was shot is that friggin' Stanley Siegel show, which exploded my mind when a friend sent it to me.
I remember that show.
Hey, did you ever see that? Yeah, it's on YouTube. And you're like, oh, it's Depardieu and Mastroianni on? And they're talking about Depardieu because he's just in 1900. He's the leading actor in France, and he's young and he's good looking at that time, and he wasn't as fat as he became. And it's just like, this is about Bye Bye Monkey, for Christ's sake. That's what they're promoting on the Stanley Siegel show, who's the New York talk show host in the mornings who would have his therapist on. He was the ultimate me generation 1970s. Yeah. He would actually have a woman, and he would sit on a couch and do his therapy on the air every Friday morning.
Right. All right.
It's called the Bye Bye Monkey.
Bye Bye Monkey.
But we know that it's really an ape, not a monkey. But
they're kind of playing with.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. Well, what a way to start.
I've got a list already now.
All right. Okay.
Wow.
John, go next.
This is a weird one that I probably, Ed, you probably know of. You maybe be even to add some interesting insights into this movie. But this is a really bizarre, cool movie that I had always heard about. It recently came out on Blu-ray, amazingly, and it is strange. It is a Spanish-French co-production from 1973. It's known under a couple titles, but the main one it's known under is called Murder in a Blue World. This movie, it's also known as A Clockwork Terror. And this is a 1973, well, some say ripoff, others say homage to Kubrick's Clockwork Orange, with Sue Lyon from Lolita, Chris Mitchum, and the French actor Jean Sorel. And this is really strange. Basically, it's a dystopian near future. People just kind of watch TV all day and are expected to conform to a perfect society. And Mitchum is part of a very Droog-like whip-wielding biker gang that breaks into homes and assaults families. They use bull whips instead of clubs like the Droogs.
Sexy.
Yes. But he's expelled from the gang after he clashes with the gang's sadistic leader, right? Meanwhile, Sue Lyon is a well-respected nurse who has a secret. She's a serial killer who basically lures handsome men to her home and then kills them after having sex with them, because to her, life is kind of meaningless and people in the world are already kind of dead. So she thinks, after having sex with a guy, he's kind of, in a state of bliss and happy. She puts her ear to her chest and listens to their heartbeat, and then she stabs him with a scalpel.
Whoa.
Wow.
And so she does this, and she goes around, sometimes in disguises, and she poses as an older lady kind of picking up a guy. And so she does this because she's this weird mania about killing these people. And meanwhile, her boyfriend, is it Gene Sorel? Is that how you pronounce it?
I believe, yes, Sorel. Yeah.
Yeah. So who's a big French actor.
Jean Sorel, yeah.
Jean Sorel, Gene Sorel. Okay, so Lion's boyfriend is Sorel, and he is a scientist experimenting on violent criminals to turn them into model citizens, much like Clockwork Orange, right? But basically, Chris Mitchum, after he's been kicked out of his gang, he happens to spot Sue Lyon disposing of one of the bodies of her victims, and so he starts blackmailing her. So all these different stories kind of combine at the end into a very strange but very cool ending. And the movie, the movie has obvious Clockwork Orange references and Kubrick references. Not only do you have, it was called A Clockwork Terror, but they literally have a scene where Mitchum's gang breaks into a family's house and rapes the wife and the guy and the husband. And but before the gang breaks into the house, the family is gathering around the TV to watch A Clockwork Orange.
Wow, nice.
Which is hilarious because it's a husband and wife and they're like 7-year-old kid watching Clockwork Orange together, right? Wow. But also there's a scene where Sue Lyon is reading Lolita, the book Lolita, and she lowers the glasses and looks. So it's more. It's not. People say it's just a shameless ripoff. No, it's not. It's like a total homage and kind of almost parody in a way.
Oh yeah, like a satire.
Yeah, but it has these kind of like RoboCop style futuristic commercials, to buy the blue drink. It's your best, all these weird stuff. One of the scenes where Sue Lyon picks up one of her victims at an auction where they're auctioning off original Flash Gordon comic strip panels.
Wow.
And so it is so bizarre, but it's really interesting. And it's again, it was 1973. The director and writer is Eloy de la Iglesia. Wow. And I guess he did some giallos and other type films. He was homosexual, and the movie has a lot of homosexual undertones. One scene has Sue Lyon going in drag as a man to pick up a guy in a gay bar and bring him back and kill him. So it's just really strange. Chris Mitchum's gang, they drive around on a dune buggy and wear these weird futuristic orange helmets. It is so strange, and it's not boring. It moves. It's you don't know where it's going. It's definitely worth checking out. It's a movie that I'd always heard about, and it was never really available in good prints. And finally, this Blu-ray company called Cauldron Films put it out, and it's great. It has beautiful widescreen remastered cut of the film, and it's definitely worth seeing. It'd be like a great double feature with Clockwork Orange. Yeah. It's really strange and really worth seeing. So I would say check it out. Murder in a Blue World.
It sounds great.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. Cool. So there you go.
Nice,
I love it,
Sean. Nice.
All right.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I actually had one that Ed had not heard of. I can't believe
like that. Wow.
It's a lot of movies I haven't seen, but that's cool. That does sound
yeah. So check it out.
Well, I'm sure Ed has heard of this one because the funny
Avatar.
thing. The funny thing is when I think of a cult film, I think of back in the days when I would go to these art houses, these film art houses, and they would show films that were unusual, unique, and maybe they didn't do well at the box office. But every time I'd go and see some of these films, and people would say, "Oh, you got to check this out, Larry." The theater, and it was a small theater, maybe about 200 people. It would always be packed, and so I would see things that were not considered popular films. And one of these was, I believe, considered a cult film. And I thought we had brought this up, but I checked our list and we hadn't. So I'm going to go on a limb here. From 1971, Harold and Maude. Starring Ruth and Bedcourt. Now, I don't know. I know that we've mentioned this before, but for listeners, if you're new to the show and you're not familiar with it, it's really a neat film because some of the stuff that I saw in this, it kind of touched me in a certain respect. And let me explain. The film is about, it focuses on Harold, who is a young guy who's obsessed with death and spooky things. And he's very wealthy and he lives with his mom, and he's always doing creepy things like pretending to hang himself or like commit suicide, but it's always it's not real.
And he freaks out.
But it's done really
he freaks
well.
out his family a lot.
And the funny thing is, when I saw this, I was thinking to myself, hey, I loved monsters, and sometimes I would go to graveyards, and people thought I was odd, and so it's like I could relate, But the funny thing about it is he's so obsessive about it. And what he would do is he would actually go to funerals and he would be all somber, trying to get into the whole death thing. But all of a sudden, he starts seeing this older lady. And instead of wearing black like everyone's, she'd wear a bright yellow color. And it would kind of irritated him. And so he kind of calls her out and they start talking. And here you have Harold, who is obsessed with death. And he meets this older woman who's obsessed with life and living experiences. Right. And it's a really great story. And it seems a little weird in the sense that these two develop a friendship that eventually becomes kind of romantic in nature. And in a way, this was kind of controversial at the time because you got someone who's in her late 70s getting together with an 18-year-old guy. In fact, there's a sequence in the film where Harold has to go and talk to a priest, and he's trying to. It's a hilarious moment when the priest is trying to explain, trying to be delicate to explain. Well, you don't want to be touching this. You don't want to be doing. It's really funny, but
he's clearly disgusted by it.
He's disturbed by it, but it's an absolutely wonderful film. I came out of the film not knowing where it was going to go.
Right.
And great music.
But I don't want to give away where it goes, but it's a really unique film.
Well, it's a very their relationship is very sweet and very it's done so well. The characters are so nicely done.
This was directed by Hal Ashby, and for some of the younger people who are listening, you may not know, but Ashby was considered he was a great director. He did films not genre-like, but Shampoo, Coming Home, Being There, The Slugger's Wife. But he did a marvelous job telling this relationship between these two people. But again, you've got the horror stuff and the stuff about death. And so it's really, really neat. It's really charming. It's lovely. I think the ending is just terrific.
It's beautiful.
And
it is.
And I remember when I saw it for the first time, I had no idea where it was going to go. And it was so great. And it is, I consider it a cult film, classic.
A cult movie, definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely. That used to be playing at midnight, or they'd show them at the rep houses.
Yes. It's like the ultimate example of a great black comedy, because it really is the relationship.
Yes, exactly, Sean.
And it was the kind of the thing that really broke Bud Cort too.
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
And this is now the funny thing is this is after Ruth Gordon had done Rosemary's Baby. Right.
Right.
He was already, she was already kind of known and stuff.
Right.
She, of course, had a huge career, but she is wonderful in this.
Genius.
Yeah, she really is.
Yeah. No, that is a great choice, Larry.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So Ruth Gordon, Bud Cort, Harold and Maude from 71.
Perfect double feature with Bye Bye Monkey.
Hello. You come out wondering what world you're in. Where am I?
All right,
James.
All right. Well, this is a movie I don't think has ever seen the light of day on video and was never technically, I don't think, released. And Ed probably knows a lot more about this movie than I do. I can also say that more people probably own the soundtrack album than have ever seen the movie. And this is from 1974. Son of Dracula, starring Harry Nilsson and Ringo Starr. And Ringo had been toying with filmmaking at the time, and he had this idea to do a rock musical about a vampire. And he was working with Harry Nilsson. He had recently played drums on one of his albums, and he invited Harry to star in it and use his own songs. So what you have is somewhat of, I guess, a vanity project. I don't think, there really wasn't much of a script, and they just seem to sort of want to get together with their friends and hang out.
Exactly.
You have, and it's on YouTube, but it's a crappy print,
crappy quality.
I know. I guess it's always, the rights to it are just like too complicated or something to release it. I guess.
And maybe there's just never been that big of a demand, but
just true.
I mean, the thing is, I love Harry Nilsson.
Me too.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and,
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
and, I,
yeah.
and I love his songs, but even this is a little hard for me to, like
Yeah.
he's not an actor. He
Yeah.
No.
plays the son of Dracula named Count Down. And
Right.
he wants out of the vampire business, so he turns to Dr. Frankenstein, who's played by Freddie Jones, and Van Helsing, who's played by Dennis Price, to try to cure him. And meanwhile, he just wants to play in his band with his friends, including Keith Moon and Peter Frampton and Klaus Vormann and John Bonham from Led
Yeah.
Zeppelin. So it's just there's no plot. It just sort of mindlessly just sort of breaks into
Yeah.
these musical numbers, and I want to like it, but it's a hard movie to like.
And
And
The concert in the middle, though, there's like, I think it's a chunk of like 10 or 15 minutes where he just sits at the piano, and that's being done live on film and with those guys you just mentioned. So that for me is the highlight of the film. The plot is god awful, but that 15-minute thing they do, crazy little mama come knocking on my front door, and it's just like this great like concert because we never saw Harry Nilsson give a concert too. That was one of the biggest things about his career is that he never toured and he never did a concert. He basically never ever appeared on stage.
Really?
The others, everybody
he had this phobia or something where he
really
he never appeared on stage.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
BBC TV. There's a BBC special which I actually got from one of Jim's friends, which is on YouTube in pieces. That's the closest he ever came to performing for an audience because there was an audience for the BBC. Yeah, he never wanted to. There's one on German TV where he just lip syncs to everybody's talking and he's just there and it's the Beat Palace or whatever, but he never wanted to appear live on stage.
Right.
So to see him do 10 or 15 minutes is the best part of that whole movie. It's terrific.
It reminds me a little bit of Bob Dylan's Ronaldo and Clara, which is another Vanity project, which is like take all the music is good. Yeah. Take all the bogus Super 8 bullshit out and just give us the concert stuff.
Just get the music.
Right.
And the surprising thing is that this is directed by Freddie Francis.
Right.
Who had done Tales from the Crypt.
Right.
Trog.
Tons of Hammer stuff. And,
I love that those are the films you're choosing to
among many others. And
Tales of the Crypt
it was also written by Jennifer Jane, who had done with Freddie Francis Tales that Witness Madness the year before.
Well, she was an actor. Yeah, she did The Crawling Eye, and they came from Beyond Space. I mean, it's the weirdest, like people behind the camera. Like it's like it's just so strange the names that come up.
A personal connection that both Larry and I have to that movie is that, we're such big fans of creature features.
Yes.
The Bob Wilkins and John Stanley hosted horror movie show that we grew up with. And it was during the Bob Wilkins run where they did a revamp of the opening credits of the show where they had a bunch of clips from movies and they played this funky creature features theme.
Yeah.
And during that montage of scenes, they use a bunch of scenes from Son of Dracula.
Wow.
And it's amazing to me because I remember watching it thinking, this looks odd, but it looks kind of cool. What is this movie?
Right.
And I was shocked to find out that it was a rock and roll opera parody horror movie.
Right.
And kind of disappointed.
Yeah.
I have the album here. The album folds out as a cape.
Oh, wow.
The album is a cape.
Wow.
And the weirdest thing, so it's a cape. It makes the movie look terrific. It has musical tracks surrounded by, but the best thing in the whole thing, which I've never, one of those t-shirt.
Got to get a picture of this.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
There's a t-shirt iron on. It says "Bite It." It says
Wow.
It should say "Bite It," but yeah, that's you get a connection design iron-on transfer.
Oh my gosh, that's got to be worth something, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've kept it for years, but it's only really good music.
Yes.
Yeah, it's only really good for the music. But
and
yeah,
the iron-on, I should also mention, includes Ringo Starr, who plays Merlin in the movie Merlin the Magician.
Right.
It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
It's weird because you think like in another universe, it could have been like another Phantom of the Paradise or something.
Exactly.
Like if it was, I mean, if people had a desire to make a good movie.
It's a write a script and kind of plan this thing.
But James, I'm curious, how did you see this? Did you
YouTube? I did own the soundtrack. I owned the soundtrack years ago because you could find it in every bargain bin.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it was RCA Records, and they were Nilsson's label, and it has a lot of Nilsson's hits on them. On it, and they were kind of reorchestrated and reperformed in some cases. So some of the music is really good.
Well, for listeners, what's really amazing is Ed has shown us this album, and it's like your standard record album. If it was 2, it would open up, and this has this cape-like thing.
Tripartite.
Right.
And I think, Matt, do you remember when you're trying to sell a record album? And it's like, hey, let's do this for the kids, or make it kind of cool. And this is something I would be crazy for.
No, I love it.
A vampire cave.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Super neat. It seems like everything surrounding the movie is wonderful.
Just never.
Except the movie.
Yeah.
It's like literally the people who work behind the scenes are what's his name, Paul Buckmaster, who did Elton John's horns and stuff. He worked with Elton John arranging stuff. So it's Nicky Hopkins, Chris Spedding, like even the people, Herbie Flowers, the jazz guitar bassist. There's this incredible, it's an incredible musical accomplishment. That's not a very good movie at all. Produced by Richard Perry, and the song Daybreak, which became because it's a joke that he's a vampire singing "Here Comes the Daybreak, bringing me down." Everybody that sort of took off because it's kind of like a little bit reggae sounding or something. Mickey Dolenz sang it. A bunch of people have covered it over the years because it's the only new song for the soundtrack, I think, except for like covers like Crazy Little Mama and stuff. But that's one that's always been a disappointment. That's always been like, why isn't this better? Why is it Magic Christian? I love all the other Ringo he made movies that only played at midnight, basically, Ringo, until he did Caveman. They're all like Blind Man, Richard Motel.
I'm pretty sure it plays at midnight now.
James, are you recommending this or
no? It's all
parts of it. You could sit the musical concerts.
No, but out of
curiosity.
As a weird curiosity piece.
I'll tell you this: if it were a better print up on YouTube, it would have been painful to sit through because a lot of it feels like somebody's 16 millimeter movie.
No, that's true.
And a better print can sort of hide that sometimes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. You see at the beginning it says Apple Films. It's like, ooh, Apple Films is a mark of quality, supposedly.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Oh wow.
So there you go.
Okay. Well, that's a great one. And
good one.
My film has a slight connection to that film.
Uh-oh.
Because, as we've done these past incarnations of cult films, I like a rock and roll movie.
Okay.
And I had a film that I saw when I was in high school. There was a time when I think I saw it every weekend for a few months.
Wow.
Really?
I loved it. I love the band that is involved with it. And a lot of people talk smack about this film now. I still love it. The film is The Song Remains the Same.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Led Zeppelin. This is a 1976 concert film, but within the concert, there are these little vignettes. They show some backstage stuff with the band's manager who is browbeating people. And there's some sort of minor story about a theft of some of the profits from the concert. And so Peter Grant was their manager and he was kind of an intimidating guy. And so, he's interrogating people and that stuff's fun. But the genre element of it is there are a number of fantasy sequences that involve various members of the band. So John Bonham, the drummer, has one that involves drag racing with cars, by the way, not the RuPaul version. And there's a John Paul Jones one, and it's really just him hanging out with his family. Exciting. And with Robert Plant, he's a medieval knight of some sort rescuing a damsel. But the one that I really enjoyed was the Jimmy Page one. Jimmy Page, the legendary guitar player. If you know about Led Zeppelin, you know that he, dabbled in the occult. And he was a big fan of Aleister Crowley and ended up living in his home. So he was really into it. So for the fantasy sequence of this, he did a little vignette that reflected that, where he's a wizard. And it's super psychedelic. And I remember sitting at the Parkside Theater. The Parkside Theater in San Francisco would play this film every weekend. And all my friends would go. And they'd always have The Song Remains the Same, but they'd match it up with another film. And so sometimes it was the Pink Floyd movie. Sometimes it was a Jimi Hendrix film. God forbid it was Yes songs, but you gotta just take it as they come. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. But so what was great about the Parkside Theater is that they let me and my hoodlum friends do whatever the fuck we wanted. And so we would go in there and we could do bong hits and we could, yell, and it was mayhem and it was glorious. By the time that I got to the part of the film where Jimmy Page is doing his fantasy, I'm about, 8 to 9 bong hits in. And it's the perfect timing because when Jimmy Page is this mystic wizard. He has a sword that he waves, and when he waves the sword, it's like a rainbow. The sword almost has a lightsaber quality about it. And so they're like, whoa, all right. And then from being Jimmy Page in this old man wizard makeup through a series of lap dissolves like the Wolfman in the Universal movies, he starts to get younger. And he gets younger and younger and younger till he's a child, and then he's a fetus.
Whoa.
And then we're like, whoa, no way.
Mind blown.
Hey, all right. Jimmy Page is a baby, and then he's a fetus. This is the greatest movie ever. So I love this movie, and I love it's been criticized for, the pretentiousness of some of it. And Zeppelin purists will sometimes say, oh, it's not really the best, performance that they ever did. All I can say is when I watched it, I fucking love the performances. And, there's when Robert Plant is doing Stairway to Heaven, he says, the forest will echo with laughter. And then he goes, does anybody remember laughter? And like little things like that just warmed my heart. And the whole scene where he's the wizard is Dazed and Confused, which is a very long song that has these amazing guitar solos. And I think that's the point too, where he uses a cello bow to play his guitar, which was then parodied in Spinal Tap.
Right.
Where he's using the violin instead.
Guitar. Yeah.
So I love this movie, and I don't care who knows it.
Well, Matt, can I ask you a question? Because I have not seen this film, but you did mention it's a filming of a concert,
yes.
Okay? And so if you're, let's say, a fan of the band, is it cool and interesting enough just to see it for that?
Oh, fuck. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you like Led Zeppelin, you'll love all this concert footage.
Because it sounds
like they do like pretty much every one of their recognizable
the classic,
hits.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure, they do Stairway to Heaven, A Whole Lot of Love, and Dazed and Confused.
It's like when you were sitting in that theater with your bong hits, I was probably like, working at the theater and using my money to get toys and stuff.
Right.
That's what I was.
Yeah, you were at home in a blanket reading the Hardy Boys,
drinking milk.
but it's like that's like one of those films that I think I'm trying to remember if it was one of those. Ooh, that's too racy for me. It's probably got drug stuff and it's.
There's not really any. I mean, there's not really any nudity as far as I can remember. I mean, it's really just kind of psychedelic in parts.
Right.
And then there's the concert stuff.
Right.
Which again, I loved. I saw this movie every weekend, and I associate it now. Maybe I'm too close to it because maybe I have sort of a sense memory now where I just associate it with good times.
That's possible, but yeah.
Sure. But maybe we could see this at Sean's or something. Go to Sean's.
I would love that. Oh, I would love that.
Sure.
Yeah.
No Reefer Madness though. I just
Son
want
of
to watch the
Dracula.
film.
Song of
There you go.
That's a cult movie because that used to play forever downtown.
Right?
And it used to play. You're right about it. I think it was whoever the distributor was. We go, let's try. Will the Yes with the Led Zepp do better than the Beatles with the? So they go Magical Mystery Tour with, and they keep pairing it with things it shouldn't be with. And it was sort of like, I guess they figured the Renaissance Fair stuff. They never put it with a film with a plot. It was always with other concert films.
Sure.
Right.
But that was definitely a cult movie because of the way I at a certain point in the 70s, I think after El Topo, even with Eraserhead, I don't even think they knew how to distribute the films, so the films would come out to colleges. They'd only play the Ringo movies. We talked about those.
They were so odd.
200 Motels. I don't know if that ever played during the day, the Zappa movie, and it probably shouldn't have because it was so insane. These movies were made for a college audience and for that audience alone, pretty much. So
now I do remember, because you're talking about these pairings, I do remember when I would go see The Song Remains the Same, that movie would play first. The second feature would be whatever. And I remember usually about 15 minutes into that second one, that's when I'd pass out.
Right.
So, and it was like, it was an endurance test. So like if it were the Pink Floyd movie, I'd make it maybe 20 minutes. If it were Hendrix, I'd last a little bit longer. But if it were Yes songs, we're talking 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's rough. That's rough. Yeah.
So there you go. The song remains the same. The legendary band Led Zeppelin.
I'm gonna have to put that down, man.
We need to all watch it together. We need to do a rock and roll film.
Oh,
yeah,
great. An all-nighter.
You gotta fly in for this.
Really, James, an
I would do it. I would do it. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh my
I like
God.
it.
All right.
Ed,
All right,
back to you.
It's back to me. Now, this is one we spoke about in our pre-show, I think the first time, because Jim and I saw this. I'm pretty sure Jim saw this with me. Tough Guys Don't Dance. Norman Mailer. It's his centenary this year. He's 100 years old, but he's dead. So it's the anniversary of his birth.
It's
called Tough Guys Don't Dance. It's based on a novel by Mailer. I will say first and foremost, as a disclaimer, I love Norman Mailer's writing and think he was a great novelist. He was about 5 things in one, and one of them was a social provocateur. He'd go on Dick Cavett. I always call him the heel wrestler, because basically at one point in that famous one with Gore Vidal, he goes, okay, I just want to get straight to you. You people in the audience agree with Gore, or are you all morons? Is that what it is? Basically, he'd play the heel wrestler. He was a Ric Flair. He was that kind of thing.
Yes, right.
So there's the 3 films he made that are avant-garde films, which are all out from Criterion on the Eclipse box. That includes the famous one, Maidstone Ray, as the physical fight with Rip Torn, which is wonderfully hysterical because Rip Torn is really trying to finish the film for him. There's no end to the film. Rip Torn's attack on him is the assassination of the political candidate. And he tells him that. He says, I wasn't going to hurt you. You don't have any end for your fucking movie. Like, it's literally Rip Torn just saying, you're champ of shit, Norman. This is he's like telling him you're making a terrible film and I gave you an end. And then he bit part of Rip Torn's ear off. So good for all of his Marquis of Queensberry. You see him earlier in the film working out with Jose Torres, excuse me, not Jose Perez was an actor. So anyway, his one legit movie that's above ground, funded by the great Golan Globus. So that should give you a clue as to how misbegotten it is, because I think they only really made, Love Streams I have on my shirt. Love Streams and Fool for Love by Altman, I think, are 2 of their only successful art films. They tried to make a whole battalion. They made King Lear with Godard, which has Norman Mailer in it. They kept trying to make. Yeah,
they were financing all kinds. Like they would finance like Chuck Norris movies, but then try to make these like high-end
art movies. And the thing is, Konchalovsky, the Maria's Lovers and stuff. They would try to do. They got Konchalovsky actually Runaway Train, which was based on a Kurosawa script, etc. So Tough Guys Don't Dance is Norman's baby from beginning to end, because he took a fairly decent little novel that he wrote. It's a short little existential piece. Guy wakes up, looks in his marijuana patch. I don't know why he has it in a patch in the woods, but he finds a woman's head and has to go back and figure out, what did I kill her? Is someone framing me? Then he goes back and finds a second blonde head. That's pretty much the plot of the novel. It's just a tight little thriller that he made into this overwrought melodrama that is pitched at a very high tone. It has a few overtones of Blue Velvet because the presence of Angelo Badalamente's music and Isabella Rossellini is the female lead. But as it goes on, the cast too, I do have to say, Wingshauser is given one of his legit roles in a legit film. Yeah, and he's playing the tough cop who, are you in Nam? Were you in Nam? He carries around a machete and he has it hung on his wall with My Best Friend 1967 and 1970. He carried it through Vietnam and he cut off people's heads. So it's Clarence Williams III has a brief appearance. Yeah, it's a really good cast. And of course, is his father, Lawrence Tierney is his father. Yeah. Well, he has to play, they had to find an old angry Irishman. So they found Lawrence Tierney, who's querying, were you straight in prison? I did my whole stay standing up. The dialogue is what kills though. And Jim remembers this. We were watching it a regular audience and it starts getting really weird. The dialogue
at about the 30-minute mark.
Yeah,
then it starts going off the rails.
It generates, and all of these stock, what would you call them? Summer stock people who are doing like a Tennessee Williams foreign accent, Southern accent. You got all these accents. The other person I didn't mention, though, at one point, Ryan O'Neal is saying to Isabella Rossellini, who he has her and he wants to cheat on her, which is so insane because she's at the height of her beauty. She's one of the most beautiful women in the world. And he's reading, honey, I was just reading in Screw Magazine that there's this Christian couple and they go and they cheat, and it's Penn Jillette is the husband. And the blonde is the blonde who becomes, she's the roadshow Tennessee Williams, Blanche Dubois woman. But it's got a line later on when he's in the car with her because she's having great orgasms, Isabella Rossellini from Penn Jillette. She's said about him previously, actually, when we see the picture, he must have the longest prick in Christendom. There is no other explanation for him. So there's these dead lines. But then he's in the car going, how could you dig Big Stoop? That's the nickname that they give to Penn Jillette.
How could you dig Big Stoop? Ryan O'Neal had to say that with a straight face.
With a straight face. It's sort of like your knife is in my dog. I have a bunch of these other ones written down. You got two. Life gives a man two balls. Use them. And then the classic. I just deep sixed head two heads. The father takes on the thing to get rid of the heads.
Deep six the heads.
The heads, and it's just basically this very surreal, very weird, because some of it he intended to be funny, because Norman was not completely oblivious, but it just is pitched at such a high tone that all of it becomes funny, and a lot of it, it's unintentionally funny. You can find this on OK.ru, because that's where I watched it to make sure I got the dialogue right here, to make sure that my quotes were actually said in the film. But yeah, as it goes on, it gets crazier and crazier, and it should just be this very mellow little writer's block. And Provincetown, Mass, by the way, I was saying my thing about cities. This is done in Provincetown and that surrounding area in Massachusetts. So it's all the woods, and it's all very beautiful, and it's like a writer's colony. So it'd be the place a writer would go to retreat, like they go to Martha's Vineyard, etc. So it's a hell of a film. It's very overwrought, and it does have a following. I've talked to people over the years who really enjoy it as a cult movie, because he did it for one reason, Colin and Globus did it for another reason, and we enjoy it for a separate. There's 4 or 5 different reasons here where what the director intended was not exactly what we get from the film, and everybody just enjoys it like it's Showgirls or something, because it's so overwrought in terms of its writing. So that's my entry for it.
One of the executive producers was Coppola, Francis Coppola.
Oh, right, you're right. Right, yes.
And it's recently been released by Vinegar Syndrome on Blu-ray.
Oh, okay. It is
nice.
Okay.
One of the other lines, I recently rewatched it.
Oh, you did? Wow.
And his father's telling him about all the heads that he found. And Ryan O'Neill's like, will you please not use that word? And his dad's like, what, heads? And O'Neill's like, yeah, heads. And his father goes, there's no real other word for it. It's all with weird. A total straight face. And Ed, you buried the lead.
Oh,
the best scene in the movie.
Okay, which one? There's many. Which one is this?
The one that most appreciated.
Oh man, oh God. Yes, thank you. How could I have forgotten that? There's a scene which you might have even seen on YouTube, because it's become a viral video. It's basically him on a thing. Isabella Rossellini has said, your husband is sleeping with my wife. We should ignore it unless we plan to kill them. And then the dialogue, the music goes up, and he turns on a hill, and there's a 360 around him when he goes, oh man, oh God, oh man, oh God, oh man. And it's just him saying, oh man, oh God, a few dozen times, saying it faster and faster. And they swing around.
And the music comes up, and it's like a scene out of The Naked Gun.
Yeah.
You don't
There's
know
actually a video on YouTube where Norman Mailer says, I made a mistake with that. That was a disaster. I would say that part of the film. The rest of the film is, I'm very proud of the film. There's actually a trailer, which my friend gave me, which you can find in different copies on YouTube, where he reads audience reactions. This is a wonderful film, and he's reading cards, clearly all written by himself, because they're either like, it was a death orgy with a lot of maniacs. I hated it. And then he goes, well written, was glad I had to think. And then at the end, and this is weird because his last novel was about Hitler. No, it was about the devil watching Hitler. He never finished his CIA novel. So he gave us instead this very curious and very interesting novel about the devil watching Hitler be born and be a little child and killing pets and stuff like that. And basically the end of the trailer for this movie is him going, the devil made this picture, and he winks at you or something like that. It's like, whoa, Norman presupposing your last book. But yeah, it's definitely Oh Man, Oh God is one of the cornerstones.
Wow.
It's only about a minute.
William Castle there.
Yeah, it's sort of, sort of like, it's done at a tone that is very, very high toned, and
like from another dimension.
It's like a jaw dropping good time. In a way,
sounds again another winner.
Yeah,
another winner, and easily available. You can find it; it's online, so it's.
And when I saw it in the theater, I didn't expect that this was.
Yeah, we went to see a good thriller. Yeah, we thought it was going to be a good thriller.
We walked out of there. Jesus, what did we just see? It was brilliant. Definitely check it out. Yeah.
Wow. We brought up some really trippy stuff today so far.
Already,
this is wild, man.
Wow, no, this is great.
Yeah.
This is the true definition of cult.
All right, Sean.
Here's one that this is a really cool movie, completely different from anything we've talked about so far. But this is another film that, again, just came out in Blu-ray relatively recently, and it's great. From 1969, this is a British film called I Start Counting. It's directed by David Green, who directed everything from The Shuttered Room to Gospel and Grey Lady Down. Wow. And this is Jenny Agutter as a young 15-year-old schoolgirl who her dad has died, so her mom has remarried, and her mom's married this other guy, and the guy has an older son. So Jenny Agutter is, she's having her own sexual awakening, and she has a huge crush on her adoptive brother, who's like twice her age. Okay. So she's just totally smitten by him. And she hangs out with these other girls at school who they're all talking about boys and sex. And, her other friend claims to be a lot more promiscuous and having, sex with these guys, but you kind of think she's just bragging. And Jenny Agutter, she's at that stage where she's becoming a woman and she has this major crush on this guy in it, but it's like, it's her brother, but not her brother because it's from another family. But then meanwhile, there is a sex murderer preying on young women in the area, on young girls. And through a series of different circumstances, Jenny Agutter starts to suspect that this foster brother, George, may be the killer.
Okay.
So it's her trying to find out, like, is he really the killer? But it's kind of the thing where she's so smitten by him. She's like, I gotta save him. I gotta try to protect him, make him come to his senses. If I just love him, So it's really cool.
Sounds a little bit like Shadow of a Doubt.
A little bit, yes, yeah. And Jenny Agutter is fantastic. She's great. I think she was a little older than what she was playing. I think she plays like about a 15-year-old, but she's wearing her schoolgirl outfits and she's very cute.
Easy. Tread carefully.
But the movie is really good. It's really interesting because it's a coming of age story meets a murder thriller, and it balances the two elements very well.
I have it in my queue. I downloaded it and I'm ready to watch it.
It's really good. And because this is a British film, 1969. So even though it's dealing with, teenage sexuality and rape and drugs and incest, it's done in a very,
tasteful way,
classy way. It is though. Yeah.
Now, hey, come on now.
But it's good. If you're a Jenny Agutter fan, it's definitely where she's great in it. It's good. It's a creepy, suspenseful film. It's interesting. Some interesting twists that happen. You don't see where they're coming as far as what's going on. And definitely check it out. It's called I Start Counting. And Vinegar Syndrome actually has just released this one too on Blu-ray. So check it out. It's really good.
Nice.
Sounds wonderful.
I think it's safe to say that we're all Jenny Agutter fans here.
Yes.
Jenny, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the
show. Sure, she is.
Bring the schoolgirl outfit.
Yeah. So look, guys, I'm gonna get a little serious here because I know. Look, Matt and I, we have this little banter about, I know that Matt's always Mr. Rock and Roll, and he thinks of me as, oh, you're so Judy Garland kind of a thing. But look, guys, I too have a rock and roll streak in me. Okay.
Ooh.
Wow.
And I had this on my list and Matt just brought up something. Matt mentioned a film that spoke to him at a very specific time in his life that was musical. Well, I'd like to bring up this film, which I do consider a cult film for a bunch of reasons. And it's a film that came out in 1982, which is the magical summer of 1982. And it dealt a lot with music. And I'm talking about Pink Floyd, The Wall. Now, I wanted to explain something here for listeners. It's like Pink Floyd, The Wall, that's from the 80s. That's old stuff. Well, at the time I was in high school, I had this girlfriend who, it was like she really wanted to do it,
Ooh.
And we went to see this film together. And this is also the time when MTV was new. Pink Floyd as a rock group had really evolved. And in this film, a lot of people say it says a lot of different things in this film. You could follow it literally as it's this rock star who lost his father in World War II and struggles to have relationships, and due to success and all the stuff that comes with being a rock star, it kind of drives him mad in a way. And then he becomes kind of this fascist. It's really a powerful, powerful film. MTV would show clips of it on television. And I remember seeing it, and the film, when it came out, it didn't play at every theater. And it just so happens that where I was living in San Jose at the time, at one of the biggest theaters there, it played there. And I got to see it with this young lady. We saw it on the massive screen with the sound was just mind-boggling. It was just amazing. And it was chilling, some of the stuff that I saw. And of course, it's weird. It's one of these films that you could say, well, it's a product of the time, and maybe it's not really something that people really like. But I do know that this film does show up at midnight shows, and there are people who are dedicated Pink Floyd fans and go to this film, and they consider it a big cult classic film. And it's really great. It's very powerful. Alan Parker was the director, and Alan Parker was a brilliant director. He directed stuff like Midnight Express from '78, Fame, a big, this is like Fame is like a big happy musical, and Pink Floyd The Wall, so disturbing. And so it was such a great film. It was mind-boggling to me. At the end of the film, I'm walking out with this young lady who, guys, this could have been my night. And I was just, and I said, "Oh my God, that was the most amazing thing." And I looked at her and said, "What did you think?" She looked at me and goes, "I hated it."
Whoa.
Every moment of this. And guys, I tell you,
That was it, huh?
that relationship ended that night.
Wow.
I couldn't. It was there. It was available to me. I couldn't go through with it. How could you not like that film? I'm not gonna have my first sexual experience with someone who didn't like Pink Floyd The Wall.
Wow. You are an alien. I don't even.
I thought you would like that. I thought.
I you know what? I love the movie. I love what you said about it. But wow. I mean, the things I would have done and said and lied about at that age.
No, so many guys.
She said I hated it.
No,
I would have completely turned it around and go, "Well, of course I hated it."
I couldn't look her in the eye. I thought, and the funny thing is, she was really, really intelligent. She was like math genius, and she knew science and stuff. But by saying that she had, I'm like, oh my God, I can't get together with this girl. Forget it.
If only you had seen Fame instead that night. Instead of
yeah. Well, you know what, Sean? I'm not sure she would have liked Fame either. But
what movies did she like?
Yeah.
You know that we'll save that.
You don't know.
We'll save that for another show. We'll save that for another show.
That's okay.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
But what's cool about it, if people haven't seen it, look, it's Pink Floyd music.
It's awesome.
It's
just awesome.
I love it.
And it's a combination of live action and animation. And the animation, it's not Disney. It's not Pixar.
Oh no.
It's standard cell animation, but it's twisted and dark and
just
psychological and
the filmmaking is great. And I love the kids when they do the famous "We Don't Need No Education." The kids with the weird ghost faces.
And the funny thing is, it's been around for such a long time. Now people kind of make fun of it and stuff, but it was so powerful at the time. And it's one of those things that it's like when you see E.T. or Star Wars for the first time, and it's like really sticks with you. Well, this film was very powerful at the time when it came out in 1982. To me, it spoke to me, and I consider that a cult film. And
great choice.
For sure.
If you like that type of music, and if you've never seen it before, it's really an interesting film. Not everybody liked it. I want to stress that.
Sure.
The reviews were somewhat mixed. Okay. Of course, as you can see with me and the young lady that went to the movie with me, but I thought it was a great movie.
I can mention
film. Yeah.
It played the only thing, and this is not me putting down the movie. I do enjoy that movie a lot. I saw it a double bill with Tommy, and that's a problem because then you see the drawing of the images. Like the animation was unbelievable, as you say, but some of the imagery, whether or not Alan Parker intended it to, dripped into when you're seeing things about World War II and and poppies and stuff like that and everything. Yeah. So there's a bit of Tommy in it. Yeah.
But at the same time, Ed, that was the story.
I still like the movie. Yeah.
But the guys who wrote the songs, this is kind of based on some of their experiences. So you had to include it because that was from their experience.
Right.
Just so happens that in Tommy, Tommy has some similar things about World War II and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't think it was Parker copying. It was that was part of the story that was told in the wall. But anyway, I think it's a great cult film. And if you haven't seen it,
I love it.
Like good music, maybe a good double bill is the one that Matt mentioned with his movie and
okay. Very different movies, but sure, why not?
Alan Parker never really had a consistent type of style. He also did like Angel Heart, Mississippi Burning, and Shoot the Moon. And some of them are better than others, but I pretty much enjoyed just about everything he did.
Yeah, me too.
He's an interesting director.
Okay, that's a great one, Larry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
good.
All right. Okay. I'm okay. Yeah. But yeah, I'll never. I know her name. I mean, I've got. There's such a powerful.
After the show.
Okay. Yeah.
Give us the gory
I'm
details.
sure she's a very successful scientist now.
Yeah.
Probably married
But
with a bunch of kids.
I wish I could have been your wingman back then. 'Cause I would have walked you over to the snack bar and just went, what the fuck are you doing?
I'm sorry.
Hey, you hate it.
I'm sorry, Matt.
Worst
I couldn't.
movie ever.
Yeah, I couldn't.
That's okay. I respect you.
James.
All right, James.
All right. This is a movie that I actually wouldn't have known about, but I had a conversation recently with Ed, who started telling me the plot, and I'm like, I've got to see this movie. And this was a movie from 1981 called Possession.
Yes.
By a Polish filmmaker named Andrzej Zulawski. It was his only movie in English, but it was shot in West Germany, and it was a French-German co-production starring Sam Neill. The same year he did The Final Conflict,
Right.
as Damien, and Isabella Gianni. And the best way to describe this in a nutshell is if Ingmar Bergman's Scenes from a Marriage was directed by David Cronenberg, this movie
That's good.
would be the result. Yeah. So, Sean, you've seen this. You agree?
Oh my gosh, no, it is a fantastic movie. In fact, David Weiner's recent And Search of Darkness Part 3, they have a segment on that film.
It's fascinating.
It's nightmarish. It's Larry, if your girlfriend couldn't take the wall.
Yes, you said it in this.
If you took her to this, it's literally like the anti-date, anti-relationship movie.
Yes.
Isabella, Johnny, and Sam Neill, like they're from the get-go, like every scene, they're just yelling at each other, and they're tense and they're erratic and they hate each other. It's just like the movie is insane, and and the James, you have to talk about the monster effects.
Right. And in the credits it says creature effects by Carlo Rambaldi, and this was the year before E.T. But like creature effects, because the movie starts, it just seems like this sort of art house European drama.
Yeah, like a failing marriage.
She announces that she wants a divorce. He doesn't accept it. They have a little son, and he's like ferociously in denial about it because he knows she's having an affair. So he seeks out the guy she's having an affair with, and that guy is like, out of some an Andy Warhol movie. Like that guy's nuts, like Udo Kier, like gesticulating and. But you wonder why exactly he's so obsessed with keeping the family together. We never really find out. There are doppelgangers.
There's weird.
It's very weird. And then there is a tentacled creature that is being bred in their closet, in their like hallway closet of the apartment house where they live. And she is having people fed to this thing. She's cutting up bodies, keeping them in the refrigerator. And ultimately, I mean, without really giving anything away, it's the act of trying to somehow grow the ideal partner because you're so disappointed in your existing partner. That's the only way I can describe
so
it.
weird.
It's very twisted. It's weird. It's fascinating. It's compelling. I mean, you're like, wow, what is going on? Yeah.
There's that scene there's a scene in the German, I forgot it was Germany and not France, where she's in the metro, she's in the subway, and she begins to quake and then begins to like shed milk and then sheds blood, and you think, is she losing her pregnancy? But it's like a weird thing because she was a prestige actress. She had just done the story of Adele H. This is very early in her career.
And she's beautiful and stunning in this movie.
Gorgeous. Yeah, she was like for her to do this, to take on this weird project, but Zulawski,
she's game. She is game.
Yeah. It's a fearless. He had specialized in doing movies with women. So he had done a movie with Romy Schneider, who they loved. Romy Schneider was loved more in France than she was in Germany, or Vienna, where she was from. So he was known as like treating female actresses well. But then you see Possession, and it's like, okay, do this. And he's kind of thrown, because he's a crazy director. He's very high toned and everything. Everything he does is over the top and kind of throws it and everything. So I was saying to Jim when I saw it, they laughed at it too much. Here in New York at the Film Forum, because they were all cognoscenti, these hip people, they kept laughing at it. And I'm like, it is funny at points, but it's not like laugh out loud. I'm laughing hysterically like this Tommy was The Room or something. It was really not that funny. Yeah, it's kind of horrific. Yeah, it's kind of like, this is really disturbing. It's like,
but again, not a date film.
Not a date film.
Not a date
film. They actually, there's a festival at the Anthology Film Archives every year for anti-Valentine's Day. So they would show possession. They would show a French. There's a French film with a beautiful title, "We Won't Grow Old Together." There's "Modern Love" by Albert Brooks and "The Heartbreak Kid," the original Heartbreak Kid, and they would show these films on Valentine's Day, on Valentine's Day to say, "Screw romance. We're going to show anti-romance."
Wow,
that's a good one.
Lovely.
It's the thing is the experience of the movie is so unique and strange that it's not even spoiling anything to say that the entire thing is a lead up to the end to some sort of last wave type apocalypse.
Right.
And that's not even spoiling it. It's just like another what the fuck?
Yeah.
So definitely do recommend it. It's been released on Blu-ray by Mondo Vision.
Wow, that's another weird one.
Great one.
Beautiful.
Kind of interested in that one, but of course not a
Me
date
too.
film.
Not a date.
Yeah.
Although maybe you would have a better time with that one than The Wall. You never know. And maybe she just needed to be pushed a little bit farther over the edge.
No, man, I don't think so.
You can at least say that Sam Neill in Possession is more convincing as the advent of the Armageddon than he was as Damien in the final.
Oh, okay.
Right?
For sure. Yeah.
Wow.
All
right, Matt.
Harsh,
Okay.
harsh.
Well, we have talked about this film in passing in other episodes, but I feel that if we're going to do now the third edition of cult films, we need to talk about this movie, and I will take the bullet to do that. We have never really discussed the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I think you're right. You're right.
Because it's so iconic. And as we were just talking about, it is one of the movies that really got that whole midnight showing
for
thing
sure
going.
Yeah.
And it's just had, such a lasting effect. I will say that I really love the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I think it's fun. The music is terrific.
Great. Yeah.
And, so this is a 1975 musical comedy horror directed by Jim Sharman based on the Richard O'Brien musical. And it was a flop when it first came out.
Right.
And it's based on, a lot of the tropes of science fiction and horror movies, but with an added sexual component. It follows Brad and Janet, played by Barry Bostwick and Susan Sarandon. They are going to go visit their high school science teacher, Dr. Scott. And on the way to visit him, their car breaks down and they have to seek help at Frankenstein Place. And they go to this big castle and they're led in by the butler, Riff Raff, who's played by O'Brien. And then there's the maid Magenta and a groupie named Columbia. And they go in and immediately get sucked into one of the most famous numbers in the film, the time warp. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have heard of it. And so you get this wonderful number. And that's such a beautiful way to really get the film going because it feels like a showstopper.
Yeah.
But then you meet Tim Curry as Dr. Frankenfurter. And when they do the number Sweet Transvestite, which I think is my favorite number in the film, because it really is a tour de force for Tim Curry. He is so charismatic and funny and chewing the scenery. When he's talking about getting them help for their car, he sings, "By the light of the night, it'll all seem all right. I'll get you a satanic mechanic." I just, it's so beautiful. And so I love this movie. And I saw it the way most people did. I saw it at a midnight showing. And by the time I saw it, it had been a tradition to have people dressing up and acting out the movie under the film. And then this set list of responses that people would have to different lines in the movie. And I just loved it. I loved everything about it. The pageantry. I love the movie in general. All the songs are fun. You've got Meatloaf comes in and does this rock and roll number, Whatever Happened to a Saturday Night. And there's the science fiction element that comes in. And then you find out what Dr. Frankenfurter is doing. He's making a man with blonde hair and a tan who's good for relieving his tension. And this guy is, this muscle man. And it's filled with such energy and life. And I think it's one of those films that, because everyone is so familiar with it, that they forget how important it was.
Yeah. And I would say also that what struck me when I first saw it, because I was the same way, like I didn't really know too much about this film, and I went with some friends on a midnight show. But what struck me is you really have to appreciate the lyrics, artistry of Richard O'Brien. He just has a very specific and unique way of writing lyrics, but also I realized, wow, this guy knows his horror and sci-fi, because I mean, when you have a line in this first song that goes, "I really got hot when I saw Janet Scott fight a Triffid that spits poison and kills." It's like, who writes that? You know?
Well, he's got, which that song is called Science Fiction Double Feature.
Yeah.
And he's also got the line, Dana Andrews said prunes gave him the runes.
Yeah. I mean, his playful way of doing it, but also there are direct visual nods to Hammer films.
Yes.
I mean, the birth of Rocky and the tank. And there's a real love of horror and sci-fi history, which I didn't expect when I first saw it. You know, I realized so he combines that with all these other elements that it's just, it is a great movie. And I actually also, I would say a movie that needs to be reassessed and watched again is Shock Treatment.
I agree.
The sequel. Shock Treatment is actually it may not be overall a better movie than Rocky Horror, but it's a better directed movie than it's very inventive. It has also great songs, and that movie needs to be reappraised. My wife and I watched it recently again, maybe a year or so ago, and I'm like, wow, this is great. Yeah. So that I would say watch that sort of again
missing.
too.
The only problem with that is it's missing Frankenfurter because he already
exactly.
So they only have the major.
That's why it doesn't.
But otherwise, she's
great stuff in it,
awesome.
though.
That movie got a bad rap when it was released because everyone was saying, "Oh, this is just Richard O'Brien
trying to be a cult film." Right.
Yeah. And also, he's making fun of his audience because his audience is a bunch of drones who file into a studio of TV audience, and they keep saying the same things to the shows.
And that one is commenting on and parodying the TV and media culture and all that. So, so I'd say also check out that. But yes, of course.
No, you are absolutely right. But as Ed just said, it needed a Tim Curry because Tim Curry is, I think, the glue that holds that thing together.
For sure.
He is this ball of charisma from the second he comes down the elevator and you see these fishnets and the pumps and he starts going. It's just like, I am in love with this guy.
Guys, Matt, I'm so glad you brought this up. And I wanted to point out that this film was made in 1975. And you're right, Matt, that we have talked about this in the past, maybe not as much, but it's funny because what you've explained, that's one of the magical things about this film. When I saw it for the first time, I'd heard about all the stuff that goes on. It's like, oh yeah, it's like a party. You go with me. The first time I saw it, I was in a theater with 6 people, and I'm watching the film by itself without audience participation. Different film for me. I didn't get it.
Right.
I went a second time, and the place, it was in Berkeley. This was about in the 80s, okay?
Yeah.
And I had a completely different experience, and I totally got it.
Right.
But guys, what I want to tell you is, in May, my daughter is turning 18 years old. She saw Rocky Horror not too long ago in Berkeley in a packed theater with a bunch of her friends, and she absolutely loved it. And she has put together a costume of Columbia, and she looks fantastic. Cool. And when she showed me, it was like, oh my God. This is and it's like, and I was asking her about the experience, and it's amazing to tell you guys that my daughter's going to be 18. She goes into Berkeley with her college friends, and they said it was packed. This film is still, there's something magical and special about it.
Yes,
I
think it's kind of the ultimate
together. Yeah, Sean,
the ultimate cult film, I think.
So, and it's like, look, I for listeners, if you haven't seen it, look, it's not like, but Matt, it's not like, hey, check it out on Netflix or something. I think this is one of those things I would suggest going out and seeing it at a midnight theater where you have a participation of people, people doing the toast and saying that, because it's like an event. It's a special event, and it's really special.
I should pop in here as a New Yorker. You got to pay tribute. This is amazing. You picked this, Matt. Sal Piro died a few months ago. Sal Piro is the man who gave us all the stuff you guys are talking about. Sal Piro was a fan who went to see it with, is it Mark Shaman? It's a famous musician who went on to write movie music. They dropped in to see it at, I believe, the Elgin in New York City. And they were just, I love this movie. I love this movie. Sal Piro is the one who ran every show at the 8th Street Playhouse for God knows how many goddamn years.
Really?
He made it into the Guinness Book of World Records as the one man who's seen one film the most times, because he would see it every week. He would welcome you as a virgin. Who's the virgins here? He's in Fame. Actually, you guys mentioned Fame, and he's the one welcoming everyone to Rocky Horror. Sal Piro was this living legend. He's almost as big in the history of midnight movies as Ben Barenholtz, who's the guy who distributed all those things and started putting them in other cities. Ben Barenholtz on the business side is the man who created the midnight movie, but Sal Piro created Rocky Horror in a way. He was always saying, well, it's a great film to begin with. I was working with, he got hired by Lou Adler to be the official fan club president and to run the showings in New York, and then to teach people how to do the routines otherwise. So basically his script, Meatloaf again, like these little things they would say were actually refined, come up with in New York, refined by Sal. And Sal just died. And the nicest thing about they live streamed, it might still be up on one of the live streams. They live streamed his memorial service, and Richard O'Brien's son spoke. He's doing a book or a documentary, as one would want to be. There's 7,000 documentaries. He had a tape he played of his father singing for Sal not science fiction, over the Frankenstein Place, acoustically on a guitar, as like a goodbye to him, because he realizes how much this one fan created the fan of Rocky Horror Picture Show. He created the thing. He's the guy who wrote the script, and so he participated in all the coffee table books and all the DVDs and blah 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 blah. And he has a bit part in shock treatment and stuff. But it's very good that you mentioned this at this time, because it's a new wound in the community. It's maybe 2 months ago. He just died recently, and he was this towering figure. It's like literally like Rocky Horror would still probably have snuck through and people would still love it, but this dude went crazy on it and it became his favorite film, and he'd had them organize, and he would have we already have a Brad, do you want to be someone else? He would actually organize the whole thing back in the 70s at the 8th Street Playhouse. It became the 8th Street Playhouse main thing on Friday and Saturday nights. So he's the guy. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because he's someone we should almost dedicate the episode to, because
we will.
Sal Piro.
Cool.
But I have to say one thing extra here about Tim Curry, because I spent a good amount of time with Tim Curry.
Oh, really?
When I was working at a theater in San Francisco where they had a show called Me and My Girl, and I worked backstage. I was the backstage guy. It's more of a kind of a traditional musical, and people who were really into Rocky Horror would line up at the stage door for when he would come out. And, I had heard things that maybe Tim Curry was trying to distance himself from this part, but I'm telling you, you didn't get a whiff of that when he came out to meet these fans. He was just the picture of graciousness and charm, and signed everything that anyone had. He signed my Super 8 digest of it. And he was great, and he would have parties, and he'd invite the staff of the theater. I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. He just a sweet, lovely, mega talented man. And and I feel so bad that he's going through the health problems that he's having. But just a sweetheart. That movie means a lot to me. And my God, that cast. Patricia Quinn as Magenta is brilliant, and so is Little Nell as Columbia, and then Charles Gray as
Gray.
When have you ever seen Charles Gray in any role like that? Like,
I know, right?
Like Blofeld getting up on the table and dancing.
Yes, crazy, just marvelous.
Yeah, that's great.
Nice.
Love it.
Awesome.
So
back to Ed.
Ed, it's back in your.
I'm back to another.
Blow our minds again, Ed.
Another one, a sense of place, and I guess I'm New York. I have a last one that's LA. If we fit in a last one, this is New York. Eddie Warhol's Trash, 1970, which has nothing to do with Andy Warhol. Nothing to do with Andy Warhol. It's a Paul Morrissey creation entirely. It's been out of print on DVD for a few years. Paul Morrissey, according to Viva on the actress Viva, on Facebook. He's not in good health. She kind of insinuated he might have some kind of dementia or Alzheimer's. We're not sure. I don't know exactly, but he's not in the best of health. They did just put out his Dracula and Frankenstein, but the movies, was it Flesh, Trash, Women in Revolt, Heat, which he owns the rights to. He had a legal deal he made with the Warhol people. You can have the rights to the ones I initially made, Chelsea Girls, Biker Boy, Nude Restaurant, which is all Viva just talking for 90 minutes. It's wonderful. Those are Andy Warhol films, but they're not. They're Paul Morrissey films. Paul Morrissey said, can I give you the rights to the original batch if I can have the rights to Trash, Flesh, including the Dracula and Frankenstein films. So for whatever reason, they're not on DVD currently. You have to buy older DVDs or find a stream of it or something like that. But he took over the Warhol Factory's films, and he actually wanted characterization and plots, and he added stuff because there had been one earlier guy, Ronald Tavell, who did that a little bit, and that's why you see like Edie Sedgwick would be playing a character finally, because the early Andy Warhol films are just experiments in endurance. Can you sit through this? Can you sit for 10 hours and watch the Empire State Building? I mean, they're that's the big secret about them, and they're held away, and don't bootleg them. And I was told if I wanted to go to the Warhol Museum, you can come in with a pencil. You can't even make notes in pen. I don't know why. They didn't think you're going to hurt the film footage or something with a pen or something. But so basically what his formula was, and he did this throughout his career into even movies like Mixed Blood, the later movies, is he found accents funny. And he particularly found a group of people who had weird accents. So in the Dracula film, Vittorio De Sica has the Italian accent. There's a French accent. Joe D'Alessandro's talking his kind of New Jersey by way of New York voice. So everyone's got a voice that clashes, that none of it makes any sense, that why are they all in the same room? Yeah. In this movie, in Trash, he sort of sets that precedent by having Joe D'Alessandro just be the quiet guy who's the junkie, who is actually shooting up for real, by the way. He was shooting, I believe, water into his veins because it really looks like real shooting up. It's not heroin. Wow. He was never a drug addict, contrary to what people might think because he played it so well. But then these women come around him, and one of them is a trans performer, or transvestite performer more properly, and they're the ones who just never stop talking. There's a woman named Andrea Feldman who was well known at Max's Kansas City. She was sort of a socialite debutante. People from Andy's circle, either from the factory, were either poor to begin with, and they were couch surfers who just lived a life of, going from one party to the next without paying, or they were socialites and debutantes who just gave up, like Edie Sedgwick, and just started to live the life of freaky people. So Andrea Feldman is one of those. She's a socialite on acid, and she talks to him. There's like 10-minute set pieces that Morrissey created with, or 15, 20 minutes in some cases, of him just experiencing women who never stop talking. One of them is named Jane Forth. She's this incredible vision of a person who looked kind of space age 3 years before Bowie did Ziggy Stardust. She has this very austere, weird look that she created herself as a teenager, and she is in fact a teenager in the movie. That's why she never gets undressed. Everybody's naked in this movie, and there's one person who isn't. It's because Jane Forth was, I think, about 17 or 16 or whatever, but she's really funny because she is a yuppie whose apartment that Joe D'Alessandro breaks into, and they go, come on, I want to see you shoot up. Will you shoot up? Come on, I want to see. And it's just her and her husband, who are two yuppies wanting to see a real junkie. We'll give you money if you shoot up in front of us, So of course, John Waters was massively influenced by this. The two pillars of his style seem to be the Kuchar brothers and Morrissey. And then his own interpretation. My final thing is, as I said about Marco Ferreri considering the movie a sci-fi movie when I thought it was more like a documentary of New York City, his own opinion of these people and of the movies he made, he's a very conservative Irish-American guy, very Catholic, who somehow kept his Catholicism even when he was working with Andy Warhol and the debauchery of the factory. And he said his opinion of it is, if you give people what they want, he has a voice like this. I've met him twice. He actually turned me down for an interview twice. If you give people what they want, be it sex, drugs, or dead bodies, which is Frankenstein, obviously, their lives will be empty and miserable. You see their foolishness. So his opinion of what you see is that these people are losers and they suck. But you watch the movie and they're actually incredibly charming. They're incredibly charming people. And that's why people like John Waters would even say, I came to New York to meet these people and to kind of hang with them. And the main one ends up being, of the women I dropped off, Holly Woodlawn, who is this trans. She was also a he at times. She's mentioned in Walk on the Wild Side, of course. And she did live a life where she would go back and forth like Jackie Curtis, her friend. They would kind of be a man for a while, be a woman for a while. Incredible in the movie. She's just very, very funny. And there's an ad-libbed scene at the end that goes on for, God knows, 20, 25 minutes of the 90 minutes, where a gay welfare worker who can get them welfare, and they're both wanting to cheat the welfare, saying she's pregnant, she's wearing a belly. He wants her shoes because he said, Joan Crawford wore those. I want to make a lamp out of them. And it's this piece of ad-libbed comedy that that just works brilliantly because it's her going, you're not going to get my fucking shoes. I'm not going to give you the shoes. And Joe D'Alessandro's only role in it is to go, give him the fucking shoes. We need the welfare. And it goes on and builds and builds in comedy. It's just a wonderful thing. And it is funny because I read a whole book. There's a book by a guy named Maurice Yakuwar, a teacher in Canada, who properly said that you should always separate the art from the artist and the artist's opinion of their own work. And he's saying that these films are actually about people who are inappropriately labeled by society as trash. That unlike what Paul Morrissey thought he was making, a film to make everyone know that you shouldn't take drugs, you'll be a loser. It's actually a fun movie with a bunch of fun people that you could imagine hanging out with, maybe not living with all the time because they probably didn't take too many baths, etc. But that's part of the fun of it is they literally drag things from the trash and they live with, I got a dresser in the trash. Isn't it nice? It's literally a very, and the New York accents are sterling. Paul Morrissey himself had that New York Irish accent. He would find people who had the thickest New York accents I've ever heard. So it's almost a clash of people talking like that. It's amazing stuff. And it's the moment that movie, and I should also say Hollywood Lawn's autobiography is called Low Life and High Heels. And she says about the book, as was a she at the end of the life, we got paid $25, $45 flat fee for doing the days. That's all they ever made. And the movie made millions overseas. It became the biggest, but next to Chelsea Girls, it was the biggest Warhol release ever. It was big in Germany. They made millions, perhaps billions over the years. And literally Hollywood Lawn's contribution, which is a lot of the movie that she's in, was about maybe $200. She got all told. They give you a day rage and you were so thrilled because you were a couch surfer. I got enough money to go to Max's Kansas City and get a steak dinner. She talks about her first $25 as an actress. She got a steak dinner at Max's. So it's sort of interesting in terms of the way he did sort of totally maneuver his cast, and that was Andy deciding just make the movie and whatever, and I'll pay you for the footage. And he gave Morrissey the ownership of it, but everyone else was screwed. No one else really made. I have the feeling Joe D'Alessandro made maybe $50 too. So over the years, they've had a problem with these movies they made back then when they were younger, and they were just looking for any kind of screen credit as it is. So anyway, it's a fun movie.
It's funny because I've known for a while of those early Morrissey films like Flesh and Heat, but the ones I've seen, and that in fact these films actually just came out in Blu-ray recently, where it was Blood for Dracula and Flesh for Frankenstein,
right?
Which are amazing films.
They're weird. Yeah, they're really weird.
But they're hilarious, and they're also at times the horror works. But Udo Kier is just. Udo Kier is the Tim Curry
of those.
I was just going to say exactly. That's what I was going to say. He's so you cannot take your eyes off him. And those movies are like horror films from another dimension too.
Yes,
they're
definitely.
Just so bizarre. But I've not seen that trilogy by Morrissey. It's Trash, Flesh, and Heat. Right?
It's Flesh, Trash, Women in Revolt, which is their parody of feminists only stocked with drag queens, and then Heat, which is a version of Sunset Boulevard, shot in L.A., I believe it was, with Sylvia Miles doing the Norma Desmond part, and Joe D'Alessandro was
the Blu-ray for Flesh for Frankenstein has a more extended Morrissey interview on it too.
Oh, wow, he did do an interview. Okay,
which is we're seeing. I think it's recent before, So fairly recently. So that's what we're seeing. But that's
curious.
Great. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, those are cult films though, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
Nice one.
Nice.
Very good.
Nice one. Sean?
Okay, so this one I think some of you guys probably have heard of. This is a pretty well-known, kind of a notorious cult exploitation film that's recently been remade from 1977, directed by Peter Traynor, Death Game.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Death Game is Seymour Cassel.
Oh, it's that one. Yes, okay.
Yeah, he is this affluent businessman who lives in San Francisco, and on his birthday, his wife has to leave unexpectedly to attend to a family emergency. So he's left by himself in his house on his birthday, and it's at night, and there's a big rainstorm, and two attractive young blondes knock on his door. The first girl is Donna, played by Colleen Camp. And the other girl's named Jackson, played by Sandra Locke. And they claim to have got the address wrong for a party they're going to, and they do want to use his phone. Before you know it, they're seducing him in the bathtub. And they're very sweet, and they just have sex with him for the night. And they say, our friends are going to come pick us up, soon. So don't worry, we'll be fine. But of course, he falls asleep, and next morning they're in the kitchen making breakfast. And he's like, aren't your friends picking you up? Well, no. They give some vague reasons why they're not. Basically, they're not leaving. and they start acting rather arrogant and crazy. They make breakfast and they just start eating like freaking animals, at the table. He's like, what the fuck's going on here? And it just gets worse and worse. And then he said, okay, you got to get the fuck out of here. I'm calling the police. But then they claim, hey, guess what? We're underage. If you call the police, we're going to claim rape. So they start rummaging through his wife's clothes and vandalizing the house, and it just gets crazier and crazier. Eventually, some guy delivering food comes by. They kill the guy, and they have George captive in his own house. What makes the movie is Colleen Camp and Sandra Locke, they're just so unhinged and more unhinged in this film. They start dressing up and putting on weird makeup on their faces and acting like little children, but like cackling crazily.
Wow.
And it's nuts. And it goes on. And so then eventually they have this kind of mock trial for the guy, and they're going to kill him. So I don't want to give away what happens, but it's this kind of like home invasion movie with these two insane but very hot women, just making your life a nightmare. And
sounds familiar. No, I tease, I kid.
It's also
past.
It's also known for a very crazy and abrupt ending, which I won't give away. It was written by Anthony Overman and Michael Ronald Ross. Peter Traynor had done some other stuff, but it was interesting is that Clint Eastwood at one time was going to direct it, and Jack Nicholson and or Jack Lemmon were at one time going to play the husband, which would have been a different movie.
Sure.
Yes,
but it was apparently a very chaotic and tense production. And Sandra Locke claimed that the director didn't really know what he was doing, and Seymour Cassel threatened to quit a couple of times because Seymour Cassel is treated like they're throwing food on him and just it's really insane. Apparently Sissy Spacek and Bill Paxton were set decorators on the film.
Whoa.
Interesting. And yeah, it's nuts. It was remade in 1980, a Spanish film called Vicious and Nude. And then just in 2015, it was remade by Eli Roth called Knock Knock, which I have not seen. And Eli Roth is a huge fan of the movie, and he actually was involved with the Blu-ray release of the film, which just came out on Grindhouse. It is it's an intense, uncomfortable, insane movie that is definitely worth checking out. Sandra Locke and Colleen Camp are amazing, and they give performances you will not forget. The opening scroll of the movie I want to read, which goes, and this is true, probably very loosely, but it says, this motion picture is based on a true story. It should serve to remind us that fate allows no man to insulate himself against the evil which pervades our society.
Whoa.
So make of that what you will. It's kind of like, it's a very exploitive movie, but also kind of a feminist movie at the same time. Again, you have to see it for Sandra Locke and Colleen Camp. They're unforgettable.
Yes, please.
There's also the weird children's theme. There's a weird there's like this little.
There's a children's song, like "Daddy," because in the film, Colleen Camp reveals that she was, seduced and abused by her dad. So there's a lot of daddy issue things going on. And Sandra Locke and Colleen Camp themselves are obviously bisexual. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But again, not a great date movie.
Yes.
But,
no.
But a great film worth checking out. And again, this movie has just been put out by Grindhouse, releasing a super deluxe Blu-ray with all these interviews and extras that's worth checking out. So Death Game. Check it out.
Death Game. Nice.
Love it.
Wow.
I should take this opportunity, if you'll indulge me. I had a celebrity encounter with Seymour Cassel.
Really?
I almost got into a car accident with him. I narrowly avoided a car accident.
Wow.
I was driving up Main Street in Santa Monica, and this red car was about to bust this move. And I'm like, does this guy know that he's about to hit me? So I slowed down to a crawl in traffic. It's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And then he slows down, rolls down the window, and it's Seymour Cassel, and he goes, I did see you, And I said, okay, cool. And in my head, I'm thinking, holy fuck, what's that guy's name? I know that guy. But Seymour Cassel did not, because I would have said, oh my God, Seymour Cassel, I love you. But I didn't, and the moment passed. But that was my Seymour Cassel celebrity encounter.
Wow, cool. Maybe he was trying to escape from Sandra Locke and Colleen Camp.
Wow.
Nice.
Very good.
Wow.
Very
Well,
cool.
I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. We're going to get away from the exploitive Death Game that Sean brought up. And
Okay.
look, I'm going out on a limb here. Maybe this is my Blackfish. Okay, I don't know. But the film that I'm going to talk about is considered a cult film. I saw this film at an art house when I was very young. My mom took me to see it, and I was just mesmerized because not only was it so artistic and beautiful, but it was charming for a kid back in the early 70s. It was really cool. Maybe for a kid of today, maybe it might be a little slow, but I still think it's a spectacular film, and it's a film that should be seen. And I'm talking about the film from 1971, The Tales of Beatrix Potter, that was directed by Reginald Mills. What is this, guys? What it is, it's basically a ballet. It's a ballet with music, and all of the ballet dancers are dressed in these amazing, fantastic costumes made exactly like the little characters, the mice and the pigs and the squirrels and the frogs from the Tales of Beatrix Potter. And it's a beautiful film. It's an excellent film. It's told in a way where it starts up by looking at beautiful fields in England, and you are introduced to a young Beatrix Potter who's drawing her stories. There's no dialogue in the entire film, but it shows that she's writing these little stories and drawing these pictures of all of these little animals, and it goes into the world of the animals. And guys, the set design and the costumes, in addition to the dancing, it's like you're jumping into the page. It's like a fantasy film, but they're so realistic. Now, you guys,
I remember seeing photos of the costumes. They look like they're perfect. They're
perfect. And the thing that is amazing, you go, well, that sounds kind of weird, guys. I want to explain something. When you are a ballet dancer and you are doing your leaps and your jumps, and you have this giant headpiece on, this is not New Zoo Review with a funky mask. It's a very realistic looking mask. The mice look real, the pigs look real, but it's like they're standing up like humans, but they're doing these dance moves, and it's mind-boggling. Probably the best, the standout performance is this guy who plays Jeremy Fisher, the frog. And they actually have it raining. It's this massive set with this giant pond and reeds and stuff. And this guy comes out, and with this realistic frog head, he's shaped just like Jeremy Fisher, and he does these leaps and these jumps, and you go, how the hell does he see in this? How does he move? And there aren't a lot of cuts. It's like they'll follow and they'll move. And the amazing thing about what the director did, Reginald Mills, this is the only film he ever directed. He was known as an editor. One of the films that he edited was The Red Shoes. He did a slew of he was an editor on a slew of other films that were like that type of entertainment. But what's great is the dancers that they got were from the British Royal Ballet Academy, and it's beautifully done. The choreography is great. The masks are fantastic. It's not something where it's a horror film. It's not. It's just a great, beautiful fantasy thing where you see all the little stories of all the characters from Beatrix Potter, and it's something that, you know, I when I got the Blu-ray, I showed it to my daughter when she was a kid, and she was blown away. So 5, 6, where things. It's not flashy fast. It's, you know, you're watching a performance, but it's great. It's beautiful.
Larry, can I ask, is it, so there's no real dialogue? So it's lyrics and music and
there's
dancing?
no lyrics. No. Imagine you're going to the ballet, Sean.
Oh, okay.
And so it's basically it's like a musical performance, and every sequence is, you've watched the story of the little mice or the pigs, and guys, you can follow it so easily. It's beautifully done. You can tell the pigs they're in the butcher's place, and they have to escape the butcher place. The mice who are hungry, they go into a dollhouse, and look at all this great food, and they get upset because it's all fake food because it's a dollhouse. And Jeremy Fisher wants to go fishing to catch a fish, and he's attacked by a giant fish. Everything is told just with music and dancing, and it's beautiful.
Wow. You know, Larry, as you're talking about this, I was looking mute on the trailer of the movie on IMDb. It does look incredible. Yeah, I mean, it's like you're looking at real animals. Yeah, with human bodies dancing. It's weird, but it's beautiful, actually.
Yeah. Now, I want to say, when I saw this in 71 at an art house with my mom, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's not something that for today, when you want something flashy, it is like a ballet performance, but it's done in these realistic sets.
Did it do well at the time when it came out?
It was an art house film, Sean. So what it actually, the funny thing is, yes, Sean, in England, it was like one of the top 10 films in 71. But it's like, it was considered, when it came to the United States, again, my mom took me to see it at the art house. It wasn't at like the big, regular theater. It made special appearances across the country. And so films like that in the 70s, it would take time for it to go around the country. And it did do well when it came out. And you're thinking, so it's a cult film? Yes, because what happens is when this comes out, it doesn't necessarily play at midnight showings, but it does go to art houses, and it's always packed when people go and see it. It's a beautiful film.
Interesting.
So
wow.
The Tales of Beatrix Potter from 1971.
And this is something that you know about intimately because you were a ballet dancer. So
yeah. I when my mother was a ballet dancer in San Francisco, and she took me to my first ballet when I was really young, like 4 years old. And as the story goes, she says, "Well, Larry, you came home and you started dancing." So they signed me up, and I danced for like 7 years. The life of a dancer is very, very hard. There's so much you have to sacrifice, and you spend a lot of time in pain trying to make things so graceful and beautiful. It takes a certain kind of dedication that when I got to a certain age, it's like, that it wasn't for me, but my whole life, I've still appreciated, love it. I'd love to go see it. And when I see this film, to me, it's like a work of art. No, it's not Pink Floyd The Wall. It is not Death Game. It is a different type of a cult film. And I strongly recommend it.
It's interesting because I thought at first when you start talking about it, I thought it'd be something like, actually, this is one movie I had at one time on a list was Wombling Free. Because the Wombles were like a big deal, and they made a movie. They made a live action movie of the Wombles. But it's more like H.R. Puffin stuff kind of thing or something. But this, looks. I mean, like I said, it's more completely unique.
Listeners, what you can do if you don't want to sit and watch the entire 2-hour thing, what you can do is you can go to YouTube. You can type in the Tales of Beatrix Potter film 1971. Type in Jeremy Fisher or Puddle Duck, and they'll show maybe the sequence, and it's magical. It's amazing.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting, Larry. I might check it out.
A little art culture there.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you for bringing it.
Yeah,
it sounds a little like a companion piece if you see the Renee Zellweger movie on Beatrix Potter and feel like you want to explore a little bit more. Just put that on afterward, and
I would say pair it with Cats.
I don't know about that. Leave it to Matt to always bring it back home. There you go, Matt. James, how about you?
Wow. Well, in these movies, I'm pretty sure all played midnight shows. And in the mid-'70s, around the time that Saturday Night Live and SCTV were coming out and becoming popular, there seemed to be something in the zeitgeist about making fun of television. And there were two independent films and one, I want to say studio film that did that. The first one was from 1974. It was called The Groove Tube.
Oh, yeah.
Made by Ken Shapiro. And it was just, it was making fun of television news, documentaries, sports, commercials, certainly. Yeah. And there'd be Chevy Chase is in it for a couple of skits. Richard Belzer is in it even more.
Yeah, amazing people show up in it.
Yeah, and Ken Shapiro himself, he put everything he had into this. He didn't do much after or apart from The Groove Tube. He directed Chevy Chase in Modern Problems a few years later, which is not a good movie. But Groove Tube is interesting. It's also like I was watching it with one of my parents on HBO years ago, and there is a public service announcement about VD. And it's being told by someone sitting on a park bench, and it's a puppet, but the puppet is a penis. It's an actual human penis talking.
Wow.
Upside down. And he's holding like a cane or something. And it's like, ooh, okay. And the one image I have coming away from that movie is that penis scene, except at the very end, for no reason at all, Ken Shapiro does this song, Just You, Just Me, this old standard, where he's singing this song or lip syncing it, but he's running around the streets of Midtown Manhattan trying to kind of turn on, passersby. And the passersby are not actors. For the most part, they're just people, So you see their legitimate reactions to this guy who's like smiling at them and singing at them. And it's just got this cheerfulness to it. The second movie came out a couple years later, and it was called Tunnel Vision.
Yes.
And this was by Neil Israel. who had a year later went on to do Americathon. And again, it's a spoof on television. And it also had Chevy Chase in it, but it also had Al Franken and Tom Davis were involved.
Howard Hessman, I think.
Howard Hessman, John Candy, and Joe Flaherty, and Lorraine Newman. I actually, when I thought we were going to have Lorraine Newman on the show and do it in person, I for some reason had a Tunnel Vision one sheet that I was going to bring with me to ask for autograph.
Is that the one that has it's like a woman's lips?
Yes,
partly open, and it's an eyeball. So that stuck in my mind so much.
Yeah. And then the third one was Kentucky Fried Movie by John Landis.
Right.
With the Zucker brothers, who had been doing Kentucky Fried Theater, which I guess was an LA comedy thing. But it had much bigger budget, and it had stars like Bill Bixby, Donald Sutherland, Henry Gibson doing these fake commercials. And being a John Landis movie, of course, it had cameos, like Fari Ackerman shows up as a juror in a scene. Felix Silla's in it.
Right.
But these are three, like if you wanted to watch three timepieces from the mid-70s where they're just lampooning what Saturday Night Live would end up doing for decades. And these three were just sort of the genesis of that, with a lot of the cast members from those shows.
Yeah, and also a lot of it's very kind of raunchy and politically incorrect.
For sure.
Lots of nudity and there's like sex and stuff. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, I remember watching them at the time, and they were just outrageous.
Yeah, right.
And they were marketed that way because you couldn't see this stuff on actual television. So you have to go to the midnight show to be able to see this stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's very hit and miss.
Yeah,
but they're interesting timepieces, and some of it is fun, yes, and some of it's legitimately funny.
Is it Kentucky Fried Movie has the movie trailer parody That's Armageddon? Isn't that with George Lazenby shows up for a second? Yeah, that's pretty good.
The Zucker brothers, just a couple of years later, went and did Airplane. And if you look at Kentucky Fried Movie now, I mean, Airplane you've seen a million times. If you look at Kentucky Fried Movie in hindsight, it's almost a prequel to Airplane. There's so many things that are stylistically and as for the beats and some of the cast members, the same ones. You can see how they were leading up to Airplane. But that's a great triple feature, though. Yeah,
I love it. I enjoy all three of those movies.
Yep.
Yeah,
cool.
Nice one, James. All right, Matt, why don't you bring us home here?
Okay. Well, I have another box office failure.
Okay.
And it's a movie that did not do well, was not reviewed too well, but it's been reassessed. I love it. And it's a prequel to a television show, and it is Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
Oh, yeah.
From 1992. Directed by David Lynch, written by David Lynch and Robert Engels. What I love about this movie is it is a prequel to what happens in Twin Peaks. I can't tell you too much about it because there are just so many spoilers.
Yeah.
What I can say is that if you watch Twin Peaks had its dark moments, but certainly, but it also had some very light moments.
Right.
And sometimes it could be quite funny and silly.
Yes.
And that was sort of weaved in with the horror of it. But Fire Walk with Me is not like that at all. It is very dark and very somber and a very strange movie, but I really love it. And at the time when I saw it, it was a little confusing to me because it felt like it was a different tone than the series. Mm-hmm. But I've watched it again and again, and I just find it fascinating and compelling. I love the performances. It's got a wonderful cast. I mean, the cast, aside from the people that you enjoyed in Twin Peaks, you have David Bowie, Chris Isaac, Harry Dean Stanton. I mean, it's just packed with stars. It follows the story of what happens to Laura Palmer before she is murdered.
Right. Yeah.
And the dark life that she led and the people involved. And without telling you too much, it also gives you a peek into some of the, I guess, what we would call supernatural entities in Twin Peaks, like Bob and Mike. And they use some of the things that they used in the series, like, the Red Room, the Man from Another Place. And so there is this link to the series, but it just feels very different. And from the very beginning, there's a scene where I believe it's with Chris Isaac and this weird redheaded woman who I suppose is an agent of some sort named Lil, who gives him clues to the case using nothing but these bizarre body movements. And it was just so odd, but intriguing and definitely original. I never would have thought of that as a scene for a film, but I think it's great. And I think a lot of people have reassessed it and come to see that it's a good movie. And,
yeah.
and it's actually one of my favorite Lynch films.
What it is it goes into darker, more graphic places that the TV show could, but in an interesting way. Like you said, it is disturbing. It's quite disturbing and shocking at times and uncomfortable, but it's good. It's a fairly long movie too. It is also way more successful to me than the later series of Twin Peaks they brought to Showtime, which just was like an indulgent mess to me. It like had some really interesting and some genius stuff, but it just went on forever and didn't go anywhere. But Fire Walk with Me is, I don't think people were prepared for it when it came out in theaters. It's like, what is going on? But it's good.
I see it as the underside of the series. Yeah, it's very disturbing and at times horrific.
Yeah.
But I love all the performances, and David Lynch's direction is offbeat and provocative as usual. And so, yeah, I'm a fan.
Wow.
I've never actually heard anyone champion that movie before. I always sort of thought of it as a failure, and I had never seen it.
It's good. In my opinion, it's very good.
Well, the one thing that I've learned from tonight is that we could go on and on and on because I'm just fascinated by all the cult films, and I know that we could easily just do another 2 hours, another 4 hours. We'll have to do this again.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Ed, you on board?
Sure. Yeah.
What do you guys say? We just do maybe a quick lightning round. We just throw out like one or two really quickly. Okay, how about that?
Okay. All right.
Give me one or two.
Go.
Last one, I already had this written up as LA film Hot Tomorrows 1977. It's often linked with Forbidden Zone because it has two similar performers in it. It's a musical dark comedy about death. Martin Brest made it when he was at the AFI. It is a schlemiel obsessed by death, played by a guy named Ken Lerner, who's been on infinite amounts of shows, including he was Buffy's principal on the Buffy Vampire Slayer. See, he's a guy from the Bronx who lives in LA, and he takes an all-night odyssey on Christmas Eve through different areas in LA that I'm not familiar with at all by car with his friend Ray Sharkey, who's in the film, who's another guy from the Bronx who's come all the way to LA. They meet up with Vic Argo from all the Scorsese movies and Hervé Villachez, who of course links it to Forbidden Zone. And they meet at a nightclub where the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo are playing. And that's the other link to the Forbidden Zone. This is 77, by the way, and Forbidden Zone is 1980. So you have Vic Argo. You also have George Memoli. They end up doing an all-night visit to a mortuary, and that's where the strangest guest star cameo comes in. There's a voice on the radio doing an ad about the mortuary. Tonight, to get sober, it's Orson Welles. He agreed to do a commercial for the holiday weekend. Has lots of fatalities. Wow. Come to us and get coffee at our mortuary. They go there, and that's where George Memoli is like a fan of going to mortuaries. I can give away enough that Ray Sharkey dies, but then it ends in a musical number, a Busby Berkeley musical number. It's like akin to what Dennis Potter was doing because they all lip sync to 42nd Street from the movie 42nd Street.
My God,
and
it's I've never heard of this.
You can see two musical numbers from it on YouTube. A friend got it for me from the BitTorrents from a VHS copy that has a sizzle on the soundtrack. Someone's tracking was off. It might be from Martin Brest's own copy. For whatever reason, they've never put the whole movie on YouTube. They have these two musical numbers. You get a musical number from the Oingo Boingo, and you get the final 42nd Street number, which does feature Hervé in a little tiny coffin, which is the funniest thing. Like they have them all in coffins, like greeting. It's like a Richard Elfman number, and basically Hervé's in a little tiny coffin and he's dancing in there. So it's a bizarre film, and also it completes my whole thing about cities because it's very much about LA, and they just keep driving through the streets of LA at night on Christmas Eve one year, and I guess in 76. This was 77. It got a release. It did play at the New York Film Festival. It played various places. It's never come out on VHS. It's never come out on DVD, but it's sort of an interesting sidebar to Forbidden Zone 3 years later because it has some of the same people.
Wow.
That's my final one. That's the final city is LA. I finally end up where you guys live.
Wow.
Moving around from city to city. So.
Great.
Sean,
As
how about
usual.
you?
All right.
Nice one.
There you
Sean,
go.
How about you? Why don't you give us a one or two?
Okay, I got a couple here. Okay, what this film I wouldn't say is a great movie, but if you want to just turn your mind off, you may get a few chuckles from it. This is from 1983. It's under several titles, but the main one it was known for at the time was The Creature Wasn't Nice. This
Wow.
was directed and written by Bruce Kimmel, and
wow.
it's basically a sci-fi alien parody with Leslie Nielsen, Cindy Williams, Bruce Kimmel,
Wow.
Garrett Graham, and Patrick McNee.
Wow.
This movie, it's a group of space explorers land on the planet, and they pick up an organism that grows into a hungry alien on the ship, and it starts attacking them. It's super low budget, with very hit or miss humor, but a very game cast. Imagine Quark meets Galaxina with some space pirates.
Wow.
but done on a way lower budget than any of those movies.
Okay.
Cindy Williams is super cute in it. Everyone has the hots for Cindy Williams. Patrick McNee is the scientist named Stark, and he wants everything named after him. Like, we call this the Stark planet. I'll call this the Stark organism. But the highlight of the movie is it's super silly and ridiculous. So at one point, the alien, which is this goofy looking one-eyed monster, they capture in this contained area under glass, and they just try to communicate with it, and they do a voice translator. And the monster breaks out into a song, and like a lounge song, and the song is called "I Want to Eat Your Face."
Nice.
But what's interesting is that, and you would appreciate this, Ed, because the film did not do well in press screenings. So it was taken away from Kimmel and retitled to be more like Airplane. So it was called Spaceship.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Airplane.
Now I know
It
this.
was also, and then for video, it was called Naked Space. Oh, that's clever.
Wow.
But it's not really like an airplane type. It's not that kind of humor. But the person who took it and re-edited it and added all kinds of extra stuff and took away the joke was Harry Hurwitz.
Oh, wow. Okay. I love it.
Which I think in the last episode we talked about him. He did the projectionist,
right.
and that's
Right.
adequate.
Right.
Exactly.
So he took the movie and kind of ruined it,
Wow.
I guess, according to Kimmel, because neither version is that super hilarious. But it's kind of interesting if you're in the mood. Garrett Graham is great in it, and so Kimmel also made the first nudie musical with Cindy Williams. But anyway, I would check that out. Kimmel just got the rights back from his movie and released the original version of it, The Creature Wasn't Nice, on DVD and like independent label. So anyway, so that's where, and then the other one I want to say is this is a Santo film. Now, I love the Santo movies, and there's, I don't know, 40 or 50 Santo films from the 60s into the 80s, but this particular movie is like the best Santo film I've ever seen. It's great. It's like a great Euro spy movie. It's called Santo versus Dr. Death. But it's great because it's a Spanish-Mexican co-production. So it feels like a Euro spy movie. And you got people like Helga Liné, Myrta Miller, and George Ugaud, all people who are in Paul Naschy movies and giallo films. So you got a cast that feels like that. Santo works for Interpol, and he teams up with this other Spanish agent to investigate an art forgery ring, which involves abducting and experimenting on beautiful women and somehow using their blood to restore paintings. Don't ask me how it works. But I'm telling you, it's a glossy production. It's good pacing and acting. James Bond style action and stunts. You got Santo hanging from a helicopter. You got a mad scientist, and you even get like a good, almost nuanced performance from Santo. I mean, I'm telling you, it's well edited, and like it's great. It's like, wow, because it's like, in other words, it's not like, yes, it's silly, but not silly in the way of the other Santo films with the monsters and stuff. It's not like stagey. It's good. It's really good. So this, of course, again, our friends at Vinegar Syndrome just put it out on Blu-ray. Santo versus Dr. Death. If you would start, I'd say start with that movie because it's really great. It's a fun time. So there you go.
Wow, nice one, Sean.
Bravo.
Nice one.
All right.
Well, I'm going to bring a couple of animated ones. I know that this director, we kind of have a love-hate relationship with him, but he also has a love-hate relationship with Disney. And I'm talking about Tim Burton and his cult film Frankenweenie, not the live action, but the animated one he did in 2012. And what I love about this film is, first of all, it's stop motion, it's black and white. Little boy, his dog gets killed, and oh my gosh, it's so tragic. And he wants to bring his dog back to life, and the only way he knows how. The weird thing is, on one hand, it's not a Pet Cemetery thing where the dog comes back and he's evil, but the dog's okay, but everyone around says, this isn't right. This is wrong. And it's really a wonderful film. It's got a lot of great, fun, spooky things, where it be this spooky cat that I don't want to say exactly what happens to the cat, this spooky turtle where this thing happens with a turtle. But I remember just absolutely loving this film. And it's one of these things where, Disney, Burton started to work at Disney, and he did this funky things. Disney really didn't know what to do with him.
I agree.
And look, they did Nightmare Before Christmas. Guys, when the film came out, Disney didn't know exactly what to do with it, and the film did okay. It took a while for it to build and turn into the franchise that it is. But consistently, when Burton would do stuff with Disney, it's like Disney always had, there were always issues, but this was something that I thought worked well, and I had a lot of fun. It's considered a cult film within the people who love Burton-esque stuff. And the last one is a film called The Man Who Planted Trees from 1987. This is directed by Frederick Bach. It's a beautiful, beautiful animated short film. It's under 30 minutes. The American version, where the narration is Christopher Plummer. And it tells the story of this man who out in nature is just constantly planting trees in this area that is, there's nothing but like fields and stuff. And this journalist kind of follows him. And it's such a great, beautiful story. And one of the things I love about it is it won the Academy Award for Best Animated Short in 1987. The guy who did the music, his name is Norman Roget, and he did the soundtrack for tons of animated films that came from Canada. And he married Marcy Page, who happened to be my animation instructor in San Francisco State. Anytime, so it's like, I'm always hearing, Marcy's husband did this, and so like, I'm always a big fan, but it's such a beautiful animated film, and I'd strongly recommend it. You can find it on YouTube. So there you go.
Once again, excellent choices.
Nice.
Thank you. So James, how about you? You want to give us a couple?
Sure. Sometimes movies come out and they're almost designed to be cult films, and it's maybe a little transparent. There's a couple of bears in the room right now that I'll address. One of them is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. And this is
yes, controversial.
Well, I guess the original Winnie the Pooh character, the copyright claim has expired. So these enterprising horror movie makers, I guess it started with a short, and it became so popular that they were able to make it into a feature film. And it's a lot like the Banana Splits horror movie.
Yeah, I saw the Banana Splits one. That's mad.
It's exactly like that.
It's like the Banana Splits one didn't make any sense though, even within its own internal logic. Like they're robots or something. It was terrible.
Terrible.
This one, Christopher Robin goes away to college, and his animal friends are so pissed off that he abandoned them that they just decide they're never going to speak again. They're going to turn feral, and then they starve because it's wintertime. So they start to eat each other. And the first one they eat is Eeyore. But it's basically, it comes down to years later, and Christopher Robin comes back from college, but it's Pooh and Piglet. And Piglet looks like this evil tusk mask, and it becomes Texas Chainsaw, basically. It's all it is that there's these sexy girls that go into the 100-acre wood as an Airbnb, and they get killed off one by one in gory, inventive ways. And it's just kind of like, I could understand the curiosity value. That's why I looked at it. But it doesn't do anything with, it's like, it doesn't do anything clever with it once it starts. It's like, okay, if you're really pissed off that he abandoned you, then do something more with it. Don't just make it into
it's like both those concepts, both those concepts seem like something like a 12-year-old boy would just think up, and just like, it's just stupid. It's not, it's bad.
Look, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Just because a dog can lick its butthole doesn't mean you have to watch it for 90 minutes, right? The other one is Cocaine Bear, which is not necessarily a cult movie. It's more of an A picture. It's Universal, and it's got a budget, and it's got good people in it. But it is, the title, Cocaine Bear, it's almost like, okay, I actually enjoyed it. I
really
liked it. I liked it a lot.
I haven't seen it, but I saw the trail. I'm like, okay, I don't have to see this movie. I saw the entire movie, and
I was curious. I was waiting for someone.
I'm curious.
I was honestly surprised how much I enjoyed it. I thought it was a kind of a nice swan song for Ray Liotta. It's not serious. It's
obviously
really,
yeah. And then finally, apart from that, this is a movie that's been on streaming. And it was made in 2010. I don't know how much this would technically qualify as a cult film, but I don't know if I'm ever going to have the opportunity to talk about it again. It's called Paul McCartney Really Is Dead. And
what?
The premise is that George Harrison, before he died in 1999, sends this DJ somewhere in the middle of nowhere a cassette tape explaining the entire cover-up, that Paul really did die, and then they did this and this and this and this. But it goes into all of these, like, they were agents of MI5 under threat of bodily harm by an MI5 agent named Mr. Maxwell. And the reason ultimately that, I mean, it gets into weird, like the reason that Lennon was assassinated had to do with the cover-up. You know, this is like, oh my God.
Now we understand.
And the guy's doing a really horrible Harrison imitation on the tape. And the balls of whoever put this thing together. And you're looking at it, I'm like, is this I guess it's supposed to be a tongue-in-cheek comedy, because there's no way anybody can take this seriously. It's not meant to be taken seriously, but it's almost always on streaming. I do recommend it just as a laugh. Again, Paul
Is it
McCartney
a short,
really,
or does it go for a long time? Is it a feature?
90 minutes. It's
90 fucking wow.
Whoa. But it also
That's rough.
It also, you know, every single element of the legend of the conspiracy, all the songs played backwards, they get into all that. And I came late to the myth. You know, I wanted to find out more about it because I didn't know. And I was always interested in that. And how did people pass it off? How did it actually gain traction as an urban legend, right?
Yeah, that aspect of it could be, I can see that element could be interesting. Yeah.
Well, it's a hodgepodge. It's got that actual, the Beatles messing around with the back playing of the records, but then it also embellishes it into these crazy lengths. So I do recommend it for that. So
wow.
That movie was very popular when Paul McCartney actually does pass away. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Nice one, James. Nice one. Well, Matt, why don't you bring it home, buddy?
What I've got for you is a 6-film marathon, and it has one theme, and that is Alice in Wonderland. So first we have the 1903 British silent version, directed by Cecil Hepworth and Percy Stowe. It was originally 12 minutes. I guess the only amount of footage left is about 9 minutes. And but it's there's some great stuff in it, some cool special effects. Then I would go to the next silent version, which is 1915, also called Alice in Wonderland, and it was directed by W.W. Young. And this one's fun. It's got also a few special effects and some stunts. Then I would go to the 1933 pre-code version, and that was produced by Paramount, all-star cast. And I mean, this cast, come on, W.C. Fields, Cary Grant, Gary Cooper, unbelievable. And some of the costumes and the set decoration is beautiful. I love this version. And you've also got a screenplay by Joseph L. Mankiewicz and William Cameron Menzies.
Really?
So you got that. And then the next one would be, of course, the Disney version, the animated version, which is wonderful, which didn't really do that well when it first came out. But then I think because we got into the psychedelic 60s, suddenly it had a new appeal.
Right.
And then in 1972, we have Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
Oh, yeah.
And this was done by producer-director William Sterling, musical score by John Barry, and lyrics by John Black. And what a cast. A lot of really great English actors and comedians. You got Michael Crawford as the White Rabbit. You've got Roy Kinnear as the Cheshire Cat. You've got Spike Milligan, Dudley Moore, Dennis Price, Ralph Richardson, Peter Sellers. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And that is another one that has really great costumes and set decoration and is a personal favorite of mine. And then finally, we have the, I guess you would call it softcore version that later became a hardcore version of Alice in Wonderland called Alice in Wonderland, an X-rated musical fantasy.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Well, this is one that was put together by the producer and the actor in Flesh Gordon.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. It was one that they were making that originally, they were going to do a very hardcore porn film, but then the production got bigger and bigger and it started to look pretty good. And so they dialed back a lot of the sex stuff. It was just nudity. And, you've got this pretty slick looking movie. And there's even a legitimate actor, Larry Gelman, as we might remember from The Odd Couple, as Vinny.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Really?
yeah.
Vinny's in it?
Vinny is in this movie. And
Wow.
and what happened is that later the producer went back and added some hardcore scenes and made it a
Right, right.
hardcore movie.
Oh,
But
interesting.
That old
originally it
boy.
was softcore. But that's another one that is way more fun than it sounds.
Cool.
And there you go.
Can I throw in two? Because there's one that I
Please.
consider one of the best ever and one of the worst ever. Well, the best ever is Jonathan Miller's 1960, I don't know the year because I haven't checked it, 65, 66. The weirdest thing about it, they have a teenage girl play it so she can play the idea that Alice is coming of age and, you know, she's eating and drinking all these things. It does have Peter Cook. I noticed because Dudley was in the one you mentioned and Peter was in this one. So Peter Cook is the Mad Hatter, and it's got a score by Ravi Shankar when Ravi Shankar had not really come out of, I don't know if George Harrison had discovered him by that point, or if, you know, because George said this might be as early as 64, but it's a 64, 65, black and white, very creepy Alice in Wonderland that Dr. Jonathan Miller, member of Beyond the Fringe, created.
Sure.
It was one of his only TV movies that he directed. And the other one,
TV movie, that's right.
the telefilm, yeah, it's really cool. The other TV movie, which just for honorable mention, we have to throw this in because the cast is mind-blowing. It's the Love Boat Fantasy Island of Alice in Wonderlands. It's about 80-something, early 80s, score by Steve Allen, who I worship Steve Allen as a comedian, as a musician, not the greatest scorer in the world, but it's an Irwin Allen-produced two-parter where they did Alice in Wonderland one night and Alice Through the Looking Glass another. And
Really?
one of them has Ringo, the most visible Beatle, and one has Sammy Davis, the most visible Rat Packer, but they don't interface. I wish there had been. Sammy's the guy who's smoking on the thing. I'm totally losing the Alice Wonderland.
Caterpillar.
The caterpillar. He's the caterpillar, and they each get songs by Steve Allen. Carol Channing sings. So Stephen Eady as Tweedledum Tweedledee. It's just one of the most mind-boggling.
What
It
year
runs
is this
a
one?
full 3 hours. Good question. I think it's somewhere in the 80s. It's like early 80s, and it has like a Love Boat, a Fantasy Island cast of anyone who would do anything on TV. Just like constant people coming at you, and they did do Through the Looking Glass too. They decided they wanted to do the full Alice saga over 2 nights, like it was the Winds of War or something like that.
leave it to Ed to bring
kind of amazing, but those are I recommend the Miller. The other one is for kitsch if you want to see some kitsch, and also just seeing Ringo, because we just mentioned Ringo's ubiquity. He was the most ubiquitous Beatle, and definitely Sammy Davis was the most ubiquitous Rat Packer. He was on every show when I was a child, every sitcom, every variety show.
Perfect cappers. I'm mad that I didn't bring up the TV film.
Oh my God! Wait, I have to just say, Ed, you mentioned the cast. I'm looking at the cast on IMDb. I'm just going to read off some of the names.
Okay, sure.
Red Buttons.
Oh, this is the later one, the Irwin Allen. Yeah.
Artie Johnson.
Yeah.
Robert Morley, Roddy McDowell, Donald O'Connor, Donna Mills, Shelley Winters, Sally Struthers, Sherman Hemsley, Jane Meadows, Anthony Newley.
Wow.
So, that one.
Yeah, it's an amazing. It's star-studded. Not good, but star-studded.
Yeah.
Well,
it's one of those that,
That's quite a festival.
And I want to thank you again for being with us.
Thank you.
This is another films. I mean, great list.
It's such a joy to have you on. Thank you so much.
You always bring these gems that we've never heard of.
I like to pride myself on knowing a lot about cinema, but man, you throw out titles I've never knew existed. I mean, I've never heard of. Yeah,
that and a quarter gets you on the subway, as they used to say, or dime or nickel. That's what it does for you.
So, Ed, if people want to check out stuff that you're doing, so where would they go to see?
Thank you. Well, I do the Media Funhouse show in New York. It can be seen when the show airs in New York, which is after Saturday Night Live, late Saturday, early Sunday, 1 a.m. We are on MNN.org, which is Manhattan Neighborhood Network, MNN.org, Channel 3, the Spirit Channel. I also have stuff on YouTube, which are short interview clips, because that's all YouTube will allow me to. And I have a blog, themediafunhouse.blogspot.com, where I did a piece, I think it was at the end of December, where I put stuff on OK.ru, because OK.ru allows me to put anything I want to do, as I do in the public access world, where I can basically, I have a freer hand to do actual fair use for the clips. Whereas YouTube is like, you're gone. They kick you out immediately. They immediately bullet the thing and close your account. So I'm all for OK.ru for that particular reason too. So I have 11 episodes sitting up there, including another failure film we could talk about some other time, The Magic Garden of Stanley Sweetheart with Don Johnson. It's a psychedelic film. So there's all kinds of weird stuff. Yeah. And other stuff, other European, real cool, avant-garde art, et cetera, et cetera. So I go from very high to very low.
And the website, the Russian website, how is it spelled?
It's just the word letters OK .ru. And you have to do a thing like if you want to see like an adult movie, you're going to have to do what you do on YouTube, which is give them an email and your name or whatever. But it's free. And I don't think if you're being surveilled, I was told by a friend, I'm being surveilled if I go on there. And it's like, you're being surveilled now. You're talking to me on Facebook. He was discussing with me on Facebook how we'd be surveilled on OK.ru. And I said, we're being surveilled right now on Facebook. Yes. And you're a Twitter user. He's Twitter and Instagram. Twitter and Instagram are totally. So I don't think OK.ru cares. They have one entire account, which is the 160 films that were made by Hammer up until the beginning of the 70s. When I wanted to do a binge for Halloween, it's insane. It's everything Hammer did in the 30s, 40s, and 50s as distributors, then everything they started making themselves in the 40s and 50s post-war. It's 160 movies, all in Blu-ray type high def condition, and it's stunning. It just is up to your buffering, how your Wi-Fi hits it. But it's a crazy resource for a lot of pre-code movies from Hollywood, a lot of foreign films. Some of them, yes, are dubbed into Russian because it is their friggin' website. But aside from those, anything that was originally in English is going to be in English, including my shows. So there you go. But yeah, Media Funhouse, you can find me all over the place as Media Funhouse. But thank you for your time. This has been great.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, always great to have you.
Look forward to next time already.
Yes, thank you.
For sure.
So what do you guys say? We raise our glasses, huh?
Yes, indeed. Yes. A toast to Ed Grant.
Thank you.
And cult films.
And I will share it with Sal Piro, the guy who created Rocky Horror. I'll share it with him because he's
for sure.
Our childhoods and our teen years over the years. Old Sal Piro.
Time for a listener shout out.
Shout out. What is this shout out? It's weird.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this is very special because this goes out to all of our listeners who have responded to our news about our new Blu-ray commentaries on the 2 Mill Creek boxes.
Yes.
Sci-Fi from the Vault and Thrillers from the Vault.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're very excited about these 2 new releases. The 30-Foot Bride of Candy Rock on Sci-Fi from the Vault, and The Boogeyman Will Get You on Thrillers from the Vault. And we've had a lot of support from listeners who have let us know that they've not only ordered it, pre-ordered it, bought it, watched it, listened to it, and enjoyed it. Yes. And we really, really appreciate that. We can't tell you enough.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I also want to give a little shout out to anyone who's going to vote for us for Best Podcast for the Rondos. We've been nominated again.
That's right.
Year.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And so, look, if you go to our Facebook page, we'll have information about where you can go to vote for us yet again, because maybe this is going to be our year.
Never know.
You never know.
Yeah. I feel good about it. And also, I'd like to throw in that coming up, I don't have the air date yet, but I will be doing an episode of Collector's Call with Lisa Welch, with my favorite wingman, Larry Strode.
I tell you, those Collector Call people, they love the Monster Party guys.
Yes, they do.
They love us, and they love our collections.
Yeah. So it's going to be very exciting, and we'll let you know when we have an air date and
for sure.
Stage your viewing party.
Fun. And a viewing party is always a lot more fun when you're wearing Monster Party swag.
Yep.
And that includes the legendary Monster Party cap with many, many stitches embroidered.
Oh, the stitches.
The Monster Party t-shirt with the logo that glows in the dark, or the kaiju design by Derek Robertson, or the Monster Party face mask, which is still, sad to say, useful in many parts of the world if you want to protect yourself, and also useful for other things if you want to multi-purpose it. You can
use your imagination.
Yeah, you can find inventive and fun ways. Also, the Monster Party shot glass, which when we win that rondo, you can raise it a toast to Monster Party, your favorite podcast.
So will we.
Yes, for sure. And hey, if you happen to be a Patreon member and you buy Monster Party merch on our eBay store, which is Monster Party Store, easy to remember, we will throw in free goodies, courtesy of our friend Jason Lindsay and Biff Bang Pow Toys.
That's right.
Yeah, he's a prince, and it's always nice to get a little prize with your purchase. So we're happy to do it.
I've been binging on cult movies so much lately that somehow my mind is completely slipped on what this Patreon thing is all about. What is this Patreon thing?
Well, Patreon is really like a cult movie. Only certain people know about it. And it gains popularity by word of mouth, my mouth to be specific. And it's a place where you can go to get bonus material from Monster Party. And we're talking bonus audio episodes, our shows like Monster Party Masterpieces, Larry's Toy Time, James's Toy Time. And you can also get these audio collections that my stepfather-in-law, John Bordeaux, put together of vintage sci-fi stories and horror stories. And we've got our trip to Japan, which we have this long-running video diary that I think everybody has enjoyed and you will enjoy if you join Patreon.
Well, it sounds fantastic, but I'm blowing all my money on these Vinegar Syndrome Blu-rays suddenly, and it sounds like I may not have the budget for this.
Well, you know what? For the purchase of 1/6 of a Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome, you can become a Monster Party patron for only $5.
Holy crap. You can't get a bootleg copy of Bye Bye Monkey with that price.
That's probably true.
I was about to walk the streets to try to find one.
Well, that's a deal. That is a definite deal. And so how does one sign up for this?
So all you got to do is you go to patreon.com, you go to Monster Party, you click the join button, you follow the instructions, and next thing you know, the monkey is going to be right in your room.
Wow. Such a deal. Well, hey, why don't we also remind our listeners that we are on social media. We are on Facebook at Monster Party TV. YouTube is also Monster Party TV. Twitter at Monster Party HQ, and Instagram also Monster Party HQ. And hey, we'd love to read one of your reviews on the air. So please take a moment. Let us know your thoughts. We are curious, and yeah, we will share it. So don't hold back.
Don't hold back. Be like Alice. Go through the looking glass.
Ooh.
Or in the porn version, the looking ass. On that note, I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Stroth.
And I'm James Gonis.
Keep America strong.
And watch killer cult films.
Like Pink Floyd's The Wall.
And if you bring a date and she doesn't like it, agree with her. Pure fucking gold. When Larry starts talking.
Okay.
Here comes Shawn. Shut up. Here comes Shawn.
I'm not gonna say a thing. I'm not gonna say a thing.
Hey, Shawn.
And there's Shawn.
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going?
Okay. All right. We got the core group. I'm assuming Ed will be here any second.
Ed should be here any second. Two things I gotta throw in. I'm fighting a shitty cough right now, but when I cough, I'm gonna try to do it like off mic. Hopefully that'll help.
James, can you just mute too? You can just mute and unmute.
Okay, I'm gonna try muting and see what happens. Because I don't know if I mute. Okay, testing, mute now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So muting will work.
James, on the Zoom thing, there's a mute on the Zoom screen.
Well, wait a minute though.
There is?
This is classic.
Shawn clears his throat all the time, but he does it when people are not talking.
Yeah,
and so that's just what you do.
I mean, if you're having
it out later,
right? But if you're having some horrendous cough attack, you can just isn't there in the bottom left corner of the Zoom screen is a mute button?
Hit the cough minus button.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will do that then. Thank you. The other thing is that
you sound fine though.
Great. 3 rooms away. My dad is sleeping. He'll probably be sleeping throughout, but in case he wakes up and needs help getting up and going to the bathroom, I may need to run over there, in which case we need a timeout or just keep talking.
We'll
talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah. Okay.
I might need help getting up and going to the bathroom in the middle of this. So one of my minders will be coming and they will take over.
Fuck that, man. I'm just going to go right in my chair.
Well, we know that. You have all the, you've got the technology.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Oh, no. Oh, there he is. Hey.
Can I be heard?
I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah.
That is a good thing. That's always
a good thing. Yeah.
Yes.
How you doing?
Oh, Ed, so happy to have you back.
Yeah, I'm flattered to be asked back. I always say that.
Always.
Great.
Ed's back. Ed's back with his boxes and boxes of ephemera behind him.
You have
research materials.
More boxes.
My life.
Ooh, and I see the is it the Is it the Fu Manchu Karloff figure?
I love that one's so great.
Yeah, that's a great one. I have that one too.
I love that one.
Ooh. So I did a whole blog entry about Fu. I was seeing all the films at once and and actually I came to the conclusion that if you're like Irish, I'm mostly Irish, Scottish, any kind of Indian, you love the movies because basically it's British people getting their shit beaten out of them by Fu. He just torments them. So if you look at it from an
people
imperialist
forget
point of view-
that.
So anyway, but yeah, I came to the idea as you read them. I read the first 3 books. I read a bunch of Romer's other books, and yeah, he was racist about Chinese. But then if you've actually put it into any kind of context, he just kicks the shit out of British guys over and over. These colonialist assholes.
He keeps coming back.
Oh, I love it. Are they going to do a new one?
No, I mean just in the books. Like he's not. They were just when you think you've got him.
Exactly.
For another adventure.
Yeah, and that's what I really don't like. That I'm not a Jess Franco fan, and those Christopher Lee's. The first one is good.
The first one's good, but the other ones they're like nothing. They like 90% of Franco's films, they wash over you like nothing. They're just terrible.
And people love him. People go crazy for
Peter Sellers. Wasn't there a Peter Sellers one?
I rewatched that. Oh man, it's bad.
That's terrible.
He should have died after being there. It was sort of like being there is so good.
Should we do a Fu Manchu night?
I want that on a t-shirt.
Oh, Fu. Oh my God. I actually have the Fu. I have Boris sitting on the big, I have a John Cassavetes shirt today, but I have the Fu Manchu like on the big wicker chair. I have that on the image. And and then I realized, like, am I perpetuating racist stereotype? I really do think that he just kicks ass out of colonialists. He basically just keeps making an idiot of them. And the Boris one is terrific. And the serial, the one Drums, is terrific. I think it's called Drums. The serial is so good.
The Boris one is just such a good movie.
Good. Yeah,
I mean, and that's the thing. And you've got like the sex appeal of Myrna Loy.
Very sexy.
And it's pre-code, right? So there's all kinds of torture. And
the famous line is something about we will take I forget exactly I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like the white man, we will take his women or something. Like he actually, Boris says he's going to take the white man's women, and God knows what he'll do to them. But it's wonderful.
It was a different time.
Yes, it's a different time.
Then there was a lot of woman taking. So
yes.
No, Matt, I'm just saying it was a different time. You know,
it was.
People weren't as aware as we are now.
Yes.
You look at that movie in within the right context, and then you can enjoy it because I mean, just the torture scenes alone.
Wonderful. They're wonderfully worked out. He has the wall closing in on the people. Then he does the famous one where he gives the guy water. Oh, it's salt, Walter. I'm sorry. Like he gives he's choking to death. And
he's just chewing up the scenery.
He's having a great time. He said he hated it because they never really defined the character for him, but he had a great time. I mean, he's really intelligent and I heartily urge you, Fu, if you can do Fu. I don't know if Fu is allowed. I mean, you'd have to bring on like a person to maybe say yes, it's racist, and you could debate the racism.
It'd be really hard to do any kind of inscrutable Asian menace.
You can't
just can't do it.
He wouldn't have to do Fu Manchu now. He'd have to be a good guy and not look anything like Fu Manchu. He'd be a guy in a suit,
right?
Yeah, I mean, look at the Marvel Comics movies, the few that I've seen. I'm not really a fan of them, but the villain is much more interesting. And the Batman movies, the villains are more interesting than the fucking hero. So it's almost like the villains are always. I know he was part of the Shang-Chi, but they didn't. I don't know if they've got the fake Fu in the Shang-Chi movie. I didn't see the Shang-Chi movie.
Well, I kind of not really.
Shang-Chi was.
They did it a different way. I enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed that movie, but it was.
I love Shang-Chi. I love the Marvel movies.
Do they have his father being a kind of a Fu archetype?
The Mandarin returns. Ben Kingsley returns.
Okay.
And it's actually it's basically kind of like the Asian version of Wakanda.
Yes.
And it's good though.
I enjoyed it.
Michelle Yeoh's great. It's fun.
Right.
It's way better than Wakanda Forever. Holy crap.
I don't know.
Well, I never. I didn't.
Don't even. I mean, it's tough. It's tough going on.
Really, Sean?
Yeah.
Really?
The movie is like it's a good try, but the movie is like watching the whole thing. You're like it's the feeling of okay, let's just get this over with so we can have fun again. That's really what it is. And but worst of all, they completely blow the introduction of Namor. It doesn't work. It's terrible. They make him like Aztec or something. It's fucking terrible.
Terrible. And that's one of my favorite characters.
I know.
They blew
it. They blew it.
You know what? Hey guys, they should call that movie Wakanda whatever.
Whatever.
Exactly.
James, are you with me?
How about Wakanda feels like forever?
See, I can't say anything because I've been so busy. I haven't been able to see it. There's a lot of things I haven't been able to see. But I did see Avatar, the water one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't
which is
know.
how it's
Give me,
is how it's referred to by most critics.
The water one.
Don't give me
Water
away. It's all, what? Did you see it, Ed? Did you see it?
No, I've got James Cameron. I've got
Ed, it's me.
I'm like Spielberg. I have certain people, Spielberg, Cameron, Tarantino. They just annoy the fuck out of me.
Successful filmmakers.
Yes.
Here we go.
Here we go. Success equals good.
It's like, those guys who make great films and makes a lot of money.
They don't, though, Larry. They make shitty films too.
No way. You know what, Sean? It's not like they go out of their way and go, I'm going to make a shitty film.
I know.
They put their all.
But if the result is still a shitty film, it's a shitty film.
Shitty film. Yeah, that's I go along with
that
that completely.
I don't think
call
any
him like
of
you
those.
see him.
No, I don't think any of those guys
sign something before you go to the movie theater. I will like this because
no.
Oh, absolutely! Are you kidding? If it's if it's just nominated for one award, Larry goes in thinking, okay, this is going to be the greatest movie ever.
Wow.
That's what it is. If it's an award-winning movie, it automatically is good.
Your peers are making comments about. They're going, hey, if you're in set design, go, wow, this set design is really great. I'm going to nominate this guy for an award.
Larry,
and it's
Larry, what about podcasts? So every podcast that is nominated for a Rondo,
there you go, is better than us. Every podcast that is nominated for a Rondo is better than Monster Party.
Oh, you're according
to the Larry Strothe rules of awards.
Let me.
Sorry,
okay,
Ed.
I know where Sean's going. No, hey, Ed, just hang on 1 second. We'll get this really quickly. It's like, do you guys remember? When they said, "Hey, we're going to try to get more people to watch the Academy Awards," and so what they decided to do is go, we're going to nominate 10, and it was like they were trying to get more people into this. Look, my issue is. I don't mind if the nominees came to like 6, it's like the standard is 5. And if it's like somewhere close, then it's like, oh, just do it to 6. That's fine. 10 I thought was ridiculous.
Why have awards at all?
No. To acknowledge excellence, to say that your work
isn't the product the movie example of proof of its excellence? The fact that people love it and go to see it. Why do we need an award?
Does the award win? So the one that gets best picture, does that mean literally that it is the best movie of the year?
No, God,
I certainly think so.
There's a very good question, and I would say it's
and it'll be answered eventually. Volume of
but this
Oscar
is great.
talk.
But we're here to talk about cult films with Ed.
Is that what we call it? Cult films or cult
I don't
movies?
know. What are we calling it?
Revenge of the cult movies?
It was Killer. The first movie was called Attack of the Killer Cult Films. The second one was Revenge of the Killer Cult Films. So I think this one should be the Killer Cult Films Strike Back.
Yes.
Fine. I love it.
Let's do it.
I love it.
Okay.
And
Sean, I'm agreeing with you.
Let's jump into
Larry,
it.
we've moved on. Now,
let's jump into it since it's
wait, before we jump into it.
It's 4 a.m. where he is.
No.
Okay?
Ed never sleeps. But guys, just so we can have like some guidance here. Some guidance.
Some guidance.
Look, some people here, I won't say any names, but some people here are real experts when it comes to picking out really obscure cult films. And
all of the rest of us.
All of us. Some of us might be like that regular Joe guy.
Oh, I see.
Wonder who that could be.
And so it's like
So Son of Flubber is going to be on your list.
So Creature from the Black Lagoon.
So no.
Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Jitty Bang Bang. All killer cult films.
So look,
Charlotte's Web 2.
My point is, okay, look, I'm going to go out on a limb here.
By not going out on a limb.
So I have a list of some cult films, but I'm not as experienced as some of you.
Right.
So I would
hope you spend some time watching more cult films instead of James Cameron films, then you'd be more prepared.
This is true.
But I don't say every day. I'm just kidding. I'm going to watch Avatar again.
Maybe Piranha.
I know, but you bring it up every freaking episode.
What, Avatar?
Yes.
Because you shit on it so much, Sean.
I know, because I don't like the first movie. I will eventually see when it comes to streaming and it's quote free, and I will see it.
Do you know how many cult films you could have seen during the time that you were watching?
Yeah, probably
Avatar?
7.
I'm talking to Sean.
Wow,
Sean, you're the film experience where you have it all wrapped around you. You know,
That's amazing.
Someone's feet up on the chair next to your head.
But
Throwing popcorn at the back.
I agree, Larry. I agree, Larry.
A baby crying.
That's the reason. But that's the reason to go see that movie is for that experience.
It's an epic. It's an epic film.
I don't want to give my hard-earned money and time and gas money to see that movie in the theater. I'll see it. I'll see it at home. I have a good surround system and a good size TV.
You go with your wife. You got socialize. Hey, look at other people there. You know,
we'd
rather go to.
I will watch it when it comes to another person's phone. Okay.
That is the worst way to see it. You don't see Avatar on your little phone. I don't care how big your phone is. Okay. All right.
Yeah, okay.
All right. That's our show. Thanks, Ed, for stopping by.
Yours are gonna suck, and
all I was gonna say is I was hoping we would. It's more of a free for all kind of thing, not like.
Sure.
I mean.
Whatever you want to do. It's
basically the Danny Perry books used to be a wild definition of occult movies. If you've ever seen those 3 Danny Perry books, the trade paperbacks, they would put in things. Even the weirdest one he ever put in, because it's one of the most popular movies ever fucking made, was The Wizard of Oz. Because The Wizard of Oz has different cults that love it. Gay people love it. There are people who are theater people like saying. So he put in But
you're right.
Not Avatar,
you don't immediately think of Wizard of Oz as a cult movie.
Right. He was just sort of spreading it because he had Rocky Horror, he had Eraserhead, El Topo, he had all the obvious
all the
ones.
classic.
And he did it to like 100. Then in the second and third books, he put in things like Vertigo is in there when you couldn't see it. He was writing it up because he'd seen it.
That makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, an academic thing because it had a cult.
Larry, do your bet. We're all going to just do our best.
Do my bet.
I mean, I think we should don't you think we should kind of take turns though, or not? I mean, Ed will go first. I think we should let Ed go first. But should we do the round robin?
I don't think anybody judges anybody. I've never heard anybody say that's a terrible choice.
Have you listened to the show, Ed? Have you listened to the show? No one judges anybody here. This is a judge-free show.
At least on the ones I'm on, I'm not judging anybody.
We judge before the show. So,
that's good. So it's pre-judging.
No, there's judging. There is judging.
Okay. All right.
I know this.
Okay. All right. Everyone.
So let's
listeners at home. I know.
Let's get this party started, shall we?
Okay.
But are we
sniff your rag with ether and let's start this.
Are we taking? So Ed's left. That's the show.
Thanks for coming.
He's leaving to go see Avatar. Give him a break.
You know what? He's creating a cult movie now where he leaves the frame entirely.
It's a Stan Brackage.
Yes.
But wait. Are we going to go in turns or not?
My thing is, let's take turns, but let's try to keep it moving.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. That's all I have to say.
Probably shouldn't be an epic.
And then
Let's try to keep it moving. That's the only thing.
I think we should also confirm, or for our audience, let them know what constitutes a cult film.
We will do that.
Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I would say it's very hard to define a cult movie because it's almost like there are so many different kinds of cults. That's what I think Tony Shore is trying to say in those books.
That'll be the definition now.
Because when you get to my turn, I'm going to say
that has a following. Any film
Avatar my dad's phone. I'll be right back, guys.
Well, I think it's like sort of like a niche. If it has a niche following, or if it has a following that is devoted to it in an unnatural way, like a lot of people see every Marvel and Avatar, but do they actually go to the theater and recite the dialogue? Do they actually like go to see it every time it plays?
Right.
Rocky Horror sort of set the mode. You know, so it's sort of
And now where's James? What the fuck is going on?
Oh, he said he's answering the phone. He's answering the phone.
Hello? And according to you, that means Star Wars. Star Wars.
I'm sorry. This is another podcast calling.
Star Wars. Is he talking to another podcast?
He's talking.
Somehow the damn dirty geeks got his number.
Hey, this whole idea. Look. So we've been nominated, Ed, for a Rondo Award.
Congratulations! Yes, I saw.
Second year in a row.
That's great.
And people out there are saying, "God, you guys are so good," and people are like chatting about us,
because we're like a cult.
We are like
you're a cult. You're a cult podcast.
We kind of are, I guess, in a way. Yeah.
We're
a niche audience.
Well, it's
we're brash. We're unconventional, maybe a little
no.
offensive.
We don't go by the rules.
No, what was the phrase? It was like a happy-go-lucky or merry-go-lucky.
No, there's would-be merrymakers.
Okay, by the way, can I just point out that is would-be merrymakers? I don't think is a good thing.
No, but I think that review.
Wait, what?
The review.
We were described as would-be merrymakers.
Because if you read the review carefully, it meant that a lot of these review sites, they review the movies on these Blu-rays, but they don't listen to the commentaries. So they just list what the commentaries are. In other words, so that guy didn't listen to any of the commentaries in that. So that's why he said would-be merrymakers, because we're called Monster Party.
He didn't say could be.
He's just commenting on the name of our podcast. He has not listened to our commentary.
I see. Okay.
So would-be merrymakers could be. It's just a neutral kind of thing to say because we're called Monster.
You say so. You know what? I'm not going to die on this hill. So
yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna lay down my sword here. I think that was a good. I think it was a good thing. It's
we got more positive reviews for these sets than any of our other ones.
We absolutely have. Yes,
it's amazing. I haven't actually read a bad one yet. So yeah,
no,
because I'm always looking to find them.
I'm writing one, but.
And there was that guy who had never heard of us and said, "Hey, these guys are great."
Yes, it's very nice. It's all very positive
because it's like, hey, because we give good quality information.
We do give good podcasts,
but we have fun. We have fun. We're not just joke.
I know. Yes,
it's good stuff.
It's a nice mixture. Now, James, you're back.
I'm not back. I just want to let you know. I'm going to run back again. Hopefully this won't happen.
Ed, how are you doing? You all right?
I'm good. Yeah, okay. I'm good. I can go as long as you want. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I will duck out to go to the bathroom, but I
that's perfectly fine.
Just let us know.
I apologize in advance to who's ever speaking while I'm in the bathroom. So I'm not doing it because anybody specific is saying something like, I disagree with that movie. I have to go to the bathroom.
They brought up Avatar again. I'm out of here.
I'm gone.
But Ed, I know it's easy for us to go 3 hours. I just want us to try to stay within the 90-minute realm.
Sure. 90 minutes to 2 hours.
That's great.
Okay.
Yes.
Try. Yeah.
All right.
But how's the weather in?
How's the
New
weather?
It was just chilly. It's just chilly.
Are we in Hooterville? What is this?
Well, can I not ask about the weather? I'm curious what the weather is like in New York.
Go ahead. Right. Yeah.
You was like, I don't care what the weather's like any place, as long as I'm fine where I am. Gosh. So it's chilly, Ed.
It's just chilly. Yes, we haven't we had a dash of snow that was one morning, and that was it. It was ridiculous. So we've had, I think, 2 dashes of snow the whole winter. So
wow,
it's a short winter. It's kind of crazy.
How are the Dodgers doing?
How are the Brooklyn? They're coming back to Brooklyn. They're coming back.
They moved in the 50s.
I'm the first to hear about this.
They play in the LA area.
Well, that's a relief.
That was the comedian Phil Foster, the guy who used to be on Laverne and Shirley. He used to have a routine. He began as a comedian who was from Brooklyn. He would talk. That's why Gary Marshall hired him, because he sounded like Gary Marshall, and he would make a good dad for Penny Marshall. He used to do a routine about the Brooklyn. There used to be a blog that had all these comedy records, and I'm a comedy record obsessive. Wow. Cool. So it was like they had comedy records that I'd never wanted to spend the money on, and I just said, let me listen to it. And one of them was Phil Foster doing "Why Did Them Bums Da 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 Da," and it's just a whole album about the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Isn't he in? He's in George Powell's Conquest of Space.
Oh, that's the guy?
As an astronaut.
Yeah. Oh, wow. He's the New York guy. Yeah. Whoa, Rosie, what are you doing?
Yeah, he's always one of those guys. Yeah.
That was his shtick.
Is that one of your cult movies, Larry?
That could be one of yours.
Great,
yeah.
Thanks. Okay, I'll cross it off the list.
Oh. All right, guys.
I'm going to surprise you.
You always kind of preface things, and then you pull out some magic. So I'm only assuming the best here.
Yep.
James, on the other hand.
Oh.